Hey everyone! Tonight, we won't be visiting a grand empire or a glorious battlefield. No, tonight we go somewhere quieter, older, somewhere dust-colored and sun-soaked. A place where stories aren't just a pastime, they are life itself. Imagine ancient Africa, not the Africa in textbooks, but the one lit by firelight and echoed by laughter, where stories curled into the air like smoke and settled into bones like warmth. The kind of stories you didn't just hear, you breathed them. Picture this: the sun has just dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in amber and violet. The last bit of daylight fades, and the village begins to gather. You can almost feel the hush set all over the earth, broken only by the crackling of fire and the occasional bleat of a goat in the distance. And then, as naturally as sleep follows exhaustion, someone speaks. An elder, a voice full of gravel and wisdom. And the story begins. You might believe that you're living in a world of comfort now. You've got your phone, your podcast app, your favorite blanket, but honestly, without ritual, without shared stories, you wouldn't have made it very far. Stories were how people survived, how they taught, how they made sense of a world that didn't come with instructions. No Google, no Wikipedia, just memory, voice, and fire. Before we drift further into the past, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely feel something here. Drop a comment, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, let the hum of a fan become your background, and let's fall into the rhythm of something ancient. Time here isn't kept by clocks, it's measured in shadows, in breath, in the hush that settles just before a tale begins. This isn't pillow talk in the modern sense, no lovers sharing secrets beneath synthetic sheets. This is something deeper, a communal breath before sleep, an exhale held between generations. Imagine the closeness, bare shoulders brushing, children dozing in laps, soft cloth whispering against the earth. The heat of the day gives way to the coolness of dusk. The smell of roasted grains and smoke lingers in the air. People settle into the circle not for show, not for distraction, but for meaning. A child leans against your side. An elder clears their throat. And then the voice, slow, intentional, alive. That voice doesn't just tell a story, it opens a portal. A gentle shift in the air, and suddenly, you're traveling not across miles, but across time. The tale might be familiar, about a jackal and a moon, or a wandering hunter, but it feels new every time. There's something sacred in the repetition, something anchoring. These weren't bedtime stories, they were blueprints for living. You'd notice the way everyone listens, fully, with their whole body. They're not just hearing, they're absorbing. There are no glowing screens, no background music, just the human voice, rising and falling like a river, carrying you away. And there's breathing, synchronized, rhythmic. As the story flows, so does the breath. It's like a choir without song, a group meditation without silence. And think about your own nights. That solo scroll through social media, that endless feed of half thoughts and hot takes. It may fill the hours, but does it fill the soul? Compare that to a circle of shared breath, a web of listening that binds everyone together. It's not just more human, it's more healing. If you were there, you'd probably feel awkward at first. The closeness, the lack of personal space. But slowly, it would shift. You'd begin to feel held, not crowded, included, not observed. The story wouldn't just unfold, it would draw you in, make you part of it. You'd find yourself waiting for familiar refrains, maybe even murmuring them under your breath. Anticipation becomes participation. Your seat might be nothing more than packed earth, but it would feel steady, grounding. The storyteller has no need for stagecraft. Their tools are rhythm, memory, and presence. You'd watch as their hands gesture, slightly, their eyes flick toward the fire, their tone dips low or rises sharp, weaving drama from nothing but air and words. The story might be a warning, or a joke, or a history, but it always carries weight, always offers something. A lesson about patience, a reminder of loss, a trickster's cleverness, You might not even notice the teaching at first, it slips in like smoke. But hours, days later, it echoes back when you need it most. And how do they remember so much? Scholars still ask. There were no books, no written scripts, just the body, the land, and the rhythm. Some believe that specific trees, rocks, or hills served as memory markers, natural mnemonics. Others say the body itself was the book, every wrinkle, every scar, a page. When they looked to the sky, they didn't see stars, they saw ancestors, myths, morals. The night sky was a living library. You didn't need a weather app, you needed to remember the story about the crooked star who tried to steal fire. And suddenly, the stars had personality, had warning, had wisdom. And here's the beautiful part. Storytelling wasn't one way. It wasn't a broadcast, it was a dance, a call and response. The storyteller might pause and someone in the crowd finishes the sentence. A child shouts out a name, a grandmother chuckles knowingly. Everyone owns the story, everyone feeds it. It lives because they keep it alive together. As night deepens, something magical happens. Your mind drifts, you're not quite asleep, not fully awake. The story seeps into your bones, wraps around your dreams. It soothes you not with false hope, but with familiar truths. You begin to feel that sleep isn't an escape, it's a continuation. The story becomes dream, the dream becomes story. That liminal space between waking and rest is where the story lives best. Your breathing slows, your thoughts dissolve. There's no need to try to fall asleep. The narrative carries you there, softly, gently, like being rocked by an unseen hand. You don't even notice the moment it happens. And as the tale circles back to where it began, a sense of peace settles over the group. You know how it ends. You've heard it before. That's the point. In a world full of change and uncertainty, the story remains, reliable, rooted, and so, your heart slows. Your eyelids drop, and you are home. The fire dims. The stars burn brighter. Somewhere nearby, a child sighs into sleep. The voice of the storyteller softens into silence, but the story, it lingers, like warmth, like breath, like memory. It's still with you. Maybe it always will be. The air in ancient Africa, especially in that delicate hour between sunset and full darkness, seemed to carry something more than mere warmth or dust. It vibrated with story. A low, nearly imperceptible hum lingered in the air, like memory itself waiting to be awakened. You wouldn't just feel it with your skin, but deep within, like a call to something older than thought. This was a world not documented by parchment or screens, but one entirely shaped and sustained through the human voice. Oral tradition was not an art form, it was the very architecture of memory, a living system through which knowledge passed like water from vessel to vessel, endlessly flowing, always essential. Imagine for a moment trying to navigate life without books, without a search bar, without a notepad or calendar. Imagine the entirety of your wisdom, how to heal a wound, when to plant your crops, who you are descended from, how to behave being carried not in ink, but in voice. It's a daunting idea for most of us now, but for those ancient communities, it was as natural as breath. And remarkably effective, the spoken word had weight. The storyteller was the memory keeper, the historian, the entertainer, the moral compass. These weren't people who simply remembered, they embodied the knowledge, and what they passed down wasn't sterile data, it was alive, wrapped in tone, gesture, rhythm, and repetition. It wasn't school, it was ritual, performance, sacred exchange. As the sun disappeared behind the acacia trees, turning the sky a bruised purple and orange, the village would begin its slow transformation. The clang of tools, the laughter of children, the barking of dogs all began to quiet. A hush would settle, as if even the insects knew something important was about to begin. The open space at the heart of the village, maybe a dusty circle near the fire, or a well-worn gathering place, became a kind of theater. But not a theater with rows and silence. This was an embrace. Families arrived slowly, bringing mats, baskets, little ones in tow. The act of gathering itself was part of the ritual. It wasn't passive consumption, it was participatory reverence. You might notice the posture of the people. Relaxed, but alert, eyes open wide in anticipation. There was an etiquette to it all unspoken, perhaps, but no less strict. The storyteller commanded attention not with force, but with presence. And the people gave it, not out of obligation, but gratitude. Because what was being shared wasn't content, it was life. It's quite a contrast to how we absorb information now. You swipe, skim, scroll, forget, attention phrase within seconds. But here, every sentence mattered. The story was a thread, and the audience held the other end tightly, determined not to let it slip. You could think of it like sipping water through cupped hands, no rushing, no waste, just focused receiving. It was that slow, deliberate act of listening that made the story sink in, not just into memory, but into spirit. And the stories, though, they weren't just stories. They were layered, metaphor-rich, poetic in their construction. They painted whole landscapes in the mind. You didn't need to see a lion to feel its breath. You didn't need to walk the desert to feel the sting of heat. The words did it for you. With closed eyes, you could travel beyond your body, beyond your generation. Language wasn't just descriptive, it was transformative. A good story didn't just tell you something, it changed the way you walked through the world. The form was often called and response, melodic, repetitive, not for lack of creativity, but because rhythm is memory's favorite companion. It drew the listener into co-creation. You weren't just hearing, you were feeling, responding, even completing the narrative with your own presence. Intonation and movement brought the tale to life. The storyteller became the fox, the king, the orphan, the wind. They gestured, leaned forward, paused dramatically. They used silence as punctuation. Every part of the body helped the story speak. And the listeners weren't mere observers. Even the youngest among them knew when to join the refrain, when to gasp, when to laugh. The community wasn't just listening, they were holding the narrative together. You might even feel like they were building something invisible, with each word a shared reality that existed only in those hours of darkness, then vanished until summoned again. Transmission of these stories began early. You would grow up hearing them over and over while eating, while playing, while drifting to sleep. By the time you could speak, you already carried pieces of 100 tales. You wouldn't be taught the stories like lessons. You'd absorb them like breath. Learning was not an event, it was a state of being. Eventually, you might start to mimic the elders, practicing the cadence, the stance, the voice of a lion or trickster. There were no formal schools, no standardized tests, but make no mistake, it was rigorous. To become a keeper of stories, you had to listen more than you spoke. You had to notice every nuance. The apprenticeship was silent, long, and beautiful. There's a striking difference here from how we define intelligence. We reward speed, analysis, innovation. But in those communities, wisdom was measured by memory, emotional depth, and delivery. A great storyteller wasn't the one who dazzled with new ideas, but the one who made the old truths ring like they were freshly born. And because these stories lived in people, not on pages, they were incredibly resilient. You couldn't burn them or bury them. They traveled with the body, survived migration, adapted to new lands. The bones of the story remained intact, but the skin could shift. New images could be layered over old truths. It made the tradition not just strong, but enduring. Some stories existed in multiple villages, thousands of miles apart, carried by generations of mouths, still recognizable. That's the power of archetype, of rhythm, of shared humanity. You might find it unbelievable, but scholars have tracked recurring characters and morals across entire continents. No ink, no archive, just memory, love, and breath. And yes, of course, they probably debated story details the way we now debate movie endings or fan theories. A community, in static, but every teller added something, a word, a gesture, a lesson tucked gently into the folds. It was adaptation, not corruption. The story grew as the people did. By the time the story ended, The stars would be thick above, the night air cooler. Children curled against shoulders, eyes half closed, but no one would move until the final word was spoken. The storyteller would lean back, the last sentence hanging in the silence like a prayer. The hush after a good story is unlike any other. It's full, satisfied, holy. And then, as if on cue, people would begin to rise, slowly, quietly, carrying their children, their thoughts, their dreams. You would walk home under the moonlight with the story echoing inside you, a gentle weight, a kind of peace, a reminder of who you are and who came before. This wasn't bedtime routine, it was spiritual ceremony. It fed not just the mind, but the soul, and maybe, just maybe, you'd wish deep down for something like that now. A soft voice, a warm fire, and a story to end your day with meaning. As the storytelling hour approached, the world beyond the communal circle began to recede into shadow and silence. The edges of the day softened, and everything seemed to lean inward, drawn to a central point, like breath held in anticipation. You would sense it, a palpable shift in atmosphere, a kind of hush that wasn't just about quiet, but about reverence. Even the wind seemed to still, as if preparing to carry the weight of ancient truths through the night air. If there stood a baobab nearby, its massive trunk white as a house, its branches twisting like calligraphy against the sky, would become the axis around which the night revolved. These trees were more than botanical giants, they were sentinels, guardians of memory. To gather beneath one was to sit at the feet of something older than history, a living monument that had silently witnessed generations come and go. Unlike your modern meeting spaces, rooms of fluorescent light and plastic chairs, this was a place where the earthly and the cosmic met beneath an open sky. Here, you didn't just hear a story, you felt it echo from the soil to the stars. Families would arrive without fanfare, the way tides roll in steadily, naturally, inevitably. Woven mats and animal hides were unfurled, and the rough shape of a circle emerged, not perfect, not measured, only felt. Children, having exhausted their energy in play and chores, nestled close to parents or grandparents, the lull of the coming story already in their eyes. There was something sacred in this quiet choreography, the rustle of cloth, the clearing of throats, the soft laughter before stillness. Everyone knew the rhythm, even if no one had ever taught it. You might laugh at the thought of organizing your modern family into such a ritual, no devices, no streaming services, just presence. And yet, here, there was no need for screens to hold attention. The promise of story was enough. One particularly enchanting element was the fire. Sometimes small, sometimes roaring. It was more than light or warmth, it was a character, flickering and pulsing in rhythm with the teller's voice. It gave punctuation to pauses, mirrored tension in a tale, and crackled triumph at a story's end. You would find yourself watching it, not passively, but in dialogue with its flame. As night deepened, so too did the sense of immersion. The world beyond, the distant rustle of grasses, the chirps of crickets, the occasional distant howl faded not into silence, but into harmony. These sounds weren't intrusions, they were instruments in a greater symphony. And you, seated in the ring, weren't merely a listener, you were a part of that music. Your breathing, your stillness, your presence, it all mattered. The storyteller, usually an elder whose voice carried both age and agility, would speak first in a hush. Their first words often hung suspended, like the moment before a drumbeat. Then, as they gained momentum, so did the room. Their voice would rise, fall, pause with gravity. No need for microphones, no booming speakers, just the natural acoustics of quiet humans and open air. It's hard to imagine now, isn't it? A voice carrying so clearly, so fully, without assistance. But it did because everyone was listening, really listening. Some scholars say that centuries of this kind of storytelling honed human ears far more than we realize. People could catch shifts in tone, small inflections, micro-emotions embedded in phrasing. Deep listening wasn't just polite, it was vital. In your world of constant background noise and competing notifications, this kind of focused, unbroken attention might feel foreign, but it was central here, and it wasn't just auditory. You would feel the closeness of bodies beside you, the subtle lean of a neighbor, the weight of a child's head on your leg. You'd hear a quiet sigh, a shared chuckle. This proximity, in a world with real dangers beyond the firelight, was safety. This closeness, which might feel suffocating to your modern sense of personal space, was deeply reassuring. There was no alone here, there was only us. Story became shield, a boundary against darkness. It offered explanation for the strange, maps for the lost, and reassurance for the frightened. It also trained the young not just in facts, but in values, in wisdom, in ways of being. The story of a clever hare or a foolish elder wasn't random. It was curriculum, it was philosophy, it was therapy. Who needed a lecture when you had a tale? There's something delightfully ironic, isn't there? You now comb forums for answers, watch endless tutorials, and still feel unsure. But once, a single tale, told well, carried everything you needed to navigate a moral crossroads. The circle itself was never exactly the same, sometimes bigger, sometimes smaller. The order of speakers might shift, or the space between them, but the principle endured: proximity, focus, respect. No one interrupted, no one distracted. The story deserved that, the community deserved that. The opening lines of the story were often well-known standard refrains that acted like magic keys. They signaled the shift: we are now entering the realm of the imagined, the sacred, the symbolic. These weren't just fancy words, they were spells. They activated memory. They stilled doubt, they pulled everyone in. And then came the tales, grand myths of creation, clever animal fables, trickster parables, tragic romances, comedies full of mischief and wisdom. These were not simple stories, they were layered tapestries of meaning. They made you laugh and then think. They made children giggle and adults reflect. And no, they didn't always go in a straight line. Some doubled back, some spun sideways, some embedded songs or chants. If you expected a beginning, middle, and end like a modern movie script, you'd be lost. But if you surrendered to the rhythm, it worked beautifully. You might not remember every twist, but you'd remember the feeling, the meaning, the lesson. In this way, the circle became a classroom, a temple, a theater all at once. The land itself seemed to listen, the tree, the wind, even the soil. All of it bore witness, and the people felt that. You would feel that, the weight of time, the nearness of ancestors. The awareness that this was not just tonight's story, but last night's, and last decades, and last centuries. It wasn't entertainment. It was identity. It wasn't pastime. It was permanence. You might wonder how such continuity was maintained for centuries. The answer is care. They cared deeply. They understood that stories weren't just what you tell, they're who you are. To forget a story was to sever a line. To misremember was to misrepresent. So they listened, carefully, repeatedly, and when it was their turn, they told it right. And the places where they told them, those sacred spots under trees or inside familiar compounds, were more than convenient spaces. They were spiritual landscapes. Memory lived there, spirit lived there. The idea that the ground itself held memory might sound poetic, but to them, it was practical truth. As the story ended, the night reached its fullest darkness. The stars overhead were countless, the fire burned lower, but the warmth lingered, and you would sit in that hush, the final words still hanging in the air like mist. You wouldn't move, not yet, because in that moment, you would know something rare and profound, that you had been part of something ancient, something enduring, something real. And as you finally stood, brushing dust from your mat, your heart would be quiet. Your thoughts stilled. You wouldn't need to check your phone. You wouldn't feel the need to fill the silence, because story had filled you. In the heart of the village, when the air cooled and the shadows grew longer, everything seemed to wait for one moment: the rise of the elder storyteller. This figure, often seated with quiet authority near the central fire or beneath the oldest tree, was more than a person with a story. They embodied the wisdom of generations, a living archive whose presence alone brought calm and attention. Children gathered near, eyes wide and waiting. Adults eased into their places, respectful and expectant. This wasn't a casual performance, it was the voice of memory awakening, the community preparing to meet its own past through the ritual of storytelling. The elder carried their knowledge not in books or scrolls, but in memory and breath. Every tale held more than characters and events, it contained history, morality, customs, names of ancestors, secrets of nature, and the subtle structure of how a people understood the world. This memory was not robotic, it was emotional and responsive, shaped by tone, rhythm, and centuries of repetition. The voice itself was trained not in schools but in lived experience, growing deeper and more textured with each retelling. In this world without writing, knowledge was living and mobile, passed through bodies and voices, and you could feel that living current each time the elder began to speak. When the storytelling began, the change in the air was almost physical. The elder's voice started low, almost as if stirring the ground itself, then gently rose, unfolding layers of story like a tapestry. The rhythm was never rushed. Every syllable carried weight, often synchronized with gestures, a hand mimicking a soaring bird, a brow lifting with a hint of mischief, a slow turn of the head to draw the entire circle into the arc of the tale. The story was not just told, it was performed through the body, voice, silence, and breath, creating an atmosphere where even the wind seemed to listen. These gestures, though subtle, added a visual language to the spoken one. The elder's hands moved sparingly, shaping the edge of a mountain, mimicking the sway of a tree, or pointing toward the stars during a cosmic legend. The face expressed every emotion, fear in a wide-eyed pause, joy in a quiet smile, grief in the deep hush that followed a tragic moment. These weren't dramatic gestures, but intimate ones, inviting the listener to feel, to imagine, and to reflect. Sometimes the most powerful moment came not from a word, but from a well-timed silence, a pause long enough for the meaning to settle like dust. The tales themselves carried the moral fabric of the community. They taught lessons through the fates of characters, often animals or mythical beings, who struggled with pride, envy, loyalty, and courage. These were not abstract lectures in right or wrong, but living parables woven into gripping narratives. A cunning hare might teach the cost of deceit. A humble herder might rise through kindness. The listener didn't just hear the lesson, they felt it, and because the stories were repeated through generations, these morals became part of everyday thinking, guiding behavior without the need for rules carved in stone. Though grounded in tradition, these stories were far from fixed. The elder adapted them to suit the moment. If the village had faced hardship, tales of resilience would emerge. If tension brewed between neighbors, stories of forgiveness and reconciliation were told with gentle emphasis. This ability to respond to the mood of the people gave storytelling a therapeutic quality. It wasn't just about the past, it was about the present, shaped in ways both conscious and intuitive. In this way, the storyteller became not only a keeper of history, but a subtle guide for navigating the challenges of the current time. There were moments when the elder would nod toward a recent event, folding it into the fabric of the story, though naturally that it felt timeless. The story might mention the shape of a storm cloud that matched yesterday's weather, or a stubborn character who bore a humorous resemblance to someone in the circle. These light touches created laughter and recognition, a reminder that the line between myth and reality was fluid. This connection kept the oral tradition fresh, alive, and participatory, inviting the audience into the act of remembering and reshaping their shared truth. The physical arrangement of the gathering also shaped the experience. Everyone sat close, forming a circle that symbolized equality, continuity, and belonging. There was no front or back, just a center where the story lived and radiated outward. The proximity brought a sense of safety, particularly in the dark hours of night, when the wild world pressed in beyond the reach of the fire. The community drew together not only to be entertained, but to be reassured, to affirm that they were not alone in the world, that their lives were part of something greater, bound by memory and voice. The structure of the stories often followed no linear path. They might loop, repeat, circle back to earlier points, or open into smaller tales nested within the larger one. This wasn't confusion, it was art. The stories mirrored the patterns of nature, the cycles of seasons, the paths of rivers, the rhythms of life itself. Listeners learned to follow the flow, to wait patiently for the lesson, and to savor the journey rather than rush toward the end. This patience built a kind of listening skill that modern life rarely cultivates, the ability to dwell in ambiguity and absorb complexity over time. When the story neared its conclusion, the shift was gentle. The voice softened, the pauses grew longer. The fire burned lower. The energy that had lifted everyone now began to settle, like dust returning to the ground. The elder didn't announce an ending. Instead, it arrived like nightfall, slow, inevitable, complete. And in that moment, no one clapped, no one moved. The silence that followed was filled with reflection, emotion, and a kind of stillness that only a well-told story could create. The final gift of the storyteller was not just the tale itself, but the space it left behind, the afterglow of meaning, the hush of collective thought. People would rise quietly, children already sleepy, adults thoughtful, warmed not just by the fire, but by the depth of what they had shared. The elder would say little, perhaps nothing at all. Their task was done, but their presence lingered in every mind, every heartbeat, as the village slowly dispersed into the night, carrying with them the soft echo of ancient voices and the deep comfort of belonging to something timeless. As nightfall deepened and the warmth of the communal circle embraced all who gathered, the storyteller's voice would begin to usher listeners into a realm of sacred beginnings. The world around seemed to quiet, as though nature itself held its breath in reverence for the stories that dared to explain everything: why the stars shine, why people walk the earth, why life exists at all. These were the creation stories, not dry chronicles of facts, but rich, poetic accounts woven with meaning and myth. They sought not just to explain, but to comfort, offering a vision of the universe where everything had a purpose, a place, a divine intention. In these stories, you wouldn't just hear about gods and the cosmos. You would feel your very existence validated, anchored to a grand and purposeful design. The earliest moments of these myths often began in a void, dark, formless, silent. Then, through a whisper, a song, or a divine breath, life would emerge. A supreme being would shape land from nothingness, birth the sky from silence, or speak the sun into being. These acts of creation were not seen as metaphorical, but as the most profound truths, passed down through generations in the form of stories that carried both spiritual resonance and social instruction. In their telling, you could sense that each word had weight, each pause carried mystery. The spoken word itself, much like the gods within the tales, had the power to call things into existence. This idea that speech was sacred, creative, divine infused the storytelling experience with a sense of reverence that transcended performance and entered the realm of ritual. The stories populated this emerging world with beings of immense power and symbolic meaning. Sky gods governed the heavens, rain spirits nourished the earth, and ancestral mothers shaped humanity with wisdom and care. Every tree, every animal, every breeze had its origin in the breath or action of a divine being. The landscape was not inert, it was alive with spirit, history, and meaning. In this worldview, nature was a sacred manuscript, and the act of living in it was a continuous reading of divine scripture. Listening to these tales, you wouldn't just hear about the gods, you would hear about the rivers near your village, the animals you saw at dusk, and the hills that rolled beyond the horizon, all woven into the sacred design of creation. Despite regional variations, these myths shared striking similarities across the continent: the emergence of life from chaos, the separation of earth and sky, the ordering of seasons and elements. These stories were shaped by their environments, whether lush forests, wide savannas, or sun-scorched deserts, each infusing the myth with local flavor and relevance. A community near water might believe the first human emerged from a river. A mountain village might revere the peak as the womb of the world. Yet all myths, no matter how different, serve the same function: to root people in a shared origin, a sacred narrative that defined who they were and how they came to be. In this, myth became identity, and storytelling became both memory and mirror. Creation myths also functioned as cultural blueprints. Within the framework of the origin story were the codes of behavior, the hierarchies of community, and the rituals that mark time and transition. A tale of the first ancestors might outline gender roles, kinship structures, or the reasons behind initiation rites. These stories justified social order not through authority, but through sacred lineage, making obedience to custom an act of honoring divine intention. You could see how a people, faced with the uncertainty of nature or conflict, found grounding in stories that reaffirmed their place in the grand cosmic order. It wasn't just entertainment, it was orientation, ethics, and social continuity disguised as narrative. One remarkable aspect of these oral traditions was how they lived not fixed in ink, but flowing like breath from elder to child, adapting while retaining essence. Through repetition, rhythm, and communal memory, vast tales were preserved across centuries. Key phrases were spoken with exact cadence, sometimes accompanied by gestures, songs, or drumming, transforming the act of remembering into a full-body ritual. Storytelling wasn't just about listening, it was about absorbing, embodying, and eventually passing it forward. In these circles, memory was not stored on paper, but in people. And the more it was told, the more deeply it rooted itself in the bones and breath of the listeners. These stories offered something your modern worldview often struggles to provide: comfort in the face of uncertainty. When death came, or crops failed, or storms tore through the village, the stories reminded everyone that such events were not meaningless. They were part of a cycle, one of birth, growth, decay, and renewal. Sacrifice, transformation, and return were not anomalies. They were truths embedded in the very structure of existence. To live meant to participate in this sacred rhythm, to endure loss knowing that renewal would come. You'd likely feel a deep sense of peace knowing that even suffering had a place in the story. Even the structure of the storytelling reinforced this harmony. Many tales were circular, looping back to where they began, or containing mirrored events that echoed through generations. This cyclical narrative mirrored the seasons, the moon, and the patterns of life itself. There were no final endings, only transformations, beginnings within endings, deaths that birthed new life. In this, the myths align more closely with lived experience than linear histories ever could. You'd find yourself lulled not just by the storyteller's voice, but by the rhythm of reality echoing in the words. By the time the story reached its end, or rather, its return, the night would have deepened. The fire might be nothing more than glowing embers, the stars overhead sharp and silent. Around you, others would be quiet, perhaps reflective, perhaps already asleep. But within, something subtle would have shifted. You would feel a soft anchoring, a gentle awareness that you were part of a continuum, a sacred thread woven into something vast and timeless. You wouldn't be left with information, but with meaning, with belonging. This was the true gift of the creation myths of ancient Africa, not just the content of the stories, but the ritual of their telling, the reassurance they offered to the soul. They transformed a chaotic world into a place of pattern and purpose, taught people not just how things came to be, but why it mattered. They provided a compass not just for understanding, but for living. And as your eyes closed and the storyteller's voice faded into the hum of insects and night winds, you'd carry that story into your dreams not as a bedtime tale, but as the very framework of your being. As the comfort of the creation myth settled in your mind, easing you into a state of serene contemplation, the elder storyteller's voice would often pivot to tales of heroism. These were the narratives that stirred the spirit, tales of brave deeds and legendary figures who navigated immense challenges, demonstrating courage, cunning, and unwavering resolve. You would find yourself transported to ancient battlefields, vast savannas traversed by intrepid explorers, or villages saved from disaster by the wisdom of a single individual. Imagine the profound impact of hearing about ancestors who faced dangers far greater than your daily inconveniences, yet emerged victorious, their stories serving as guiding beacons. This wasn't merely entertainment, it was instruction, a powerful pedagogical tool for instilling virtues like bravery, resilience, and ethical leadership in the younger generation. You might compare it to your superhero movies, but with far deeper cultural resonance and a direct connection to your own lineage. Historians still debate the precise line between historical fact and legendary embellishment in these heroic sagas, but their enduring moral and social utility is beyond question. You'd likely find a surprising depth of character development in these oral traditions, often exceeding the superficiality of some modern narratives. These heroic journeys often began with an ordinary individual facing an extraordinary call to action, a challenge that demanded immense personal sacrifice and unwavering dedication. You would hear about a young hunter who tracked a fearsome beast, a wise woman who outwitted a cunning adversary, or a chief who united warring tribes. Imagine the thrill of the narrative as the hero embarked on their quest, encountering obstacles, betrayals, and moments of profound despair, only to find the strength within to persevere. This narrative structure, so familiar even in your modern storytelling, resonated deeply because it mirrored the universal human experience of confronting adversity. It provided a comforting framework for understanding hardship, teaching that struggle was an inherent part of growth and that even the darkest nights could lead to the dawn. You might find yourself unconsciously drawing parallels to your own personal challenges, finding subtle guidance in the hero's path. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect of these tales is the emphasis on communal effort even in individual heroic deeds. The hero rarely acted alone, they were often aided by spirits, ancestors, or the collective wisdom of their community, subtly reinforcing the importance of social cohesion. You'd probably find this focus on collective strength a refreshing contrast to your often individualistic celebrations of heroism. The adversaries in these heroic tales were not always monstrous creatures. Sometimes, they were more abstract forces like famine, disease, or internal conflict within the community. You would learn about heroes who found innovative solutions to feed their people during times of scarcity, or healers who discovered remedies for widespread ailments, or peacemakers who bridged divides between factions. Imagine the practical wisdom embedded within these narratives, offering blueprints for addressing real-world problems. These stories served as a communal problem-solving manual, passed down through generations, ensuring that valuable lessons were never forgotten. This practical application of narrative was a key distinction from purely fantastical tales. You might find it a strangely comforting thought that even in the face of insurmountable odds, there was always a path forward, revealed through the experiences of those who came before. There's a humorous thought. They probably had their own versions of viral life hacks embedded in these stories, though far more profound than your digital tips. The enduring popularity of certain heroic archetypes across different African cultures suggests a shared understanding of what constitutes courage and leadership, transcending geographical boundaries. You'd likely recognize universal patterns of human behavior and aspiration within these ancient narratives, connecting you to a distant past. The moral lessons embedded within these heroic journeys were often subtle, delivered not through explicit pronouncements, but through the consequences of the characters' actions. You would see how arrogance led to downfall, how humility brought success, and how compassion fostered lasting peace. Imagine absorbing ethical principles not through abstract rules, but through vivid, relatable examples, making them far more compelling and memorable. This narrative-based ethical education was profoundly effective, shaping the moral compass of the community without overt didacticism. You might find this gentle approach a refreshing change from your more direct, sometimes confrontational, methods of moral instruction. The narratives also serve to reinforce social structures and cultural values, subtly guiding individuals towards behaviors that benefited the collective. One interesting, though less frequently discussed, element is the role of praise songs or chants that often accompanied the telling of heroic deeds. These rhythmic interjections served not only to highlight key moments, but also to cement the hero's legacy in the collective memory, ensuring their continued inspiration. You'd probably find the intertwining of narrative and music a particularly potent combination, engaging both the mind and the emotions. As the hero's journey approached its triumphant conclusion, or perhaps its poignant lesson, you would feel a sense of catharsis, a release of tension that left you feeling both inspired and soothed. The struggles of the hero, though ancient, would resonate with your own daily challenges, offering a sense of solidarity and hope. Imagine going to sleep with the image of a courageous ancestor in your mind, their strength subtly empowering your own spirit. This psychological uplift was a vital function of these heroic tales, providing comfort and resilience in a world that often demanded both. You might find it a far more effective antidote to stress and anxiety than your digital escapism, which often leaves you feeling more disconnected than empowered. The stories often ended not with a simple happily ever after, but with a reflection on the hero's lasting legacy and the lessons their journey imparted to the community. This emphasis on communal benefit, rather than individual glory, was a hallmark of many African heroic narratives. There's a peculiar truth. These heroes weren't perfect, often displaying flaws and making mistakes, which made them more relatable and their triumphs more meaningful. This nuanced portrayal offered a more realistic understanding of human nature than some of your idealized modern figures. Scholars often explore how these heroic narratives formed the bedrock of early African leadership philosophies, emphasizing qualities like wisdom, self-sacrifice, and community service. You'd probably be struck by the timelessness of these virtues, still relevant in any age. The comforting ritual of hearing these heroic journeys, night after night, instilled a profound sense of self-worth and collective pride. You would feel a connection to a lineage of greatness, a quiet confidence born from knowing that you were part of a people capable of extraordinary feats. This was the true pillow talk past, a gentle infusion of courage and inspiration that prepared you not just for sleep, but for facing the challenges of another day with renewed spirit. The narrative served as a psychological anchor, grounding you in the strength of your ancestors and reminding you that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit, buoyed by communal support, could triumph. You would drift off to sleep, perhaps dreaming of your own moments of bravery, knowing that the echoes of ancient heroes would continue to guide your path. Having journeyed through the solemn depths of creation myths and the inspiring heights of heroic sagas, the elder storyteller's voice would often shift, bringing a lighter, more whimsical tone to the evening. You would find yourself easing into the world of humorous fables and trickster tales, narratives designed not just to entertain, but to subtly teach valuable lessons through laughter and absurdity. Imagine the communal release of tension that would accompany these stories, the soft chuckles rippling through the gathered audience, a cunning animal outwitted a stronger foe, or a foolish character blundered into an amusing predicament. This was a vital component of the pillow talk past, offering a counterpoint to the weightier narratives, ensuring that wisdom was delivered with a light touch, making it more digestible and memorable. You might compare it to your late-night comedy shows, but with a pedagogical purpose far beyond mere amusement. Historians still debate the precise psychological functions of humor in ancient societies, but its role in social bonding and cognitive development is widely acknowledged. You'd likely appreciate the cleverness embedded within these seemingly simple tales, revealing a sophisticated understanding of human nature. These tales often featured anthropomorphic animals, each embodying distinct personality traits and often representing different aspects of human behavior. You would hear about the cunning spider, Anansi, whose insatiable greed often led to hilarious downfalls, or the clever tortoise, who outsmarted larger, more powerful creatures through wit alone. Imagine these characters brought to life by the storyteller's vivid voice, their antics unfolding in your mind's eye with a clarity that surpassed any animation. These animal characters provided a safe distance for exploring human foibles and societal norms without directly naming individuals, allowing for gentle critique and self-reflection. This metaphorical approach made the lessons universally applicable and less threatening. You might find it a brilliant way to discuss complex social issues without resorting to confrontational debates. There's a humorous thought. They probably had their own version of memes in the recurring characteristics and catchphrases of these popular animal figures. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the way these trickster figures, despite their mischievousness, often acted as agents of change or catalysts for important societal transformations, highlighting the fine line between chaos and creativity. You'd probably find their nuanced portrayal of villains far more complex than your typical black and white antagonists. The lessons embedded in these humorous fables were rarely explicit pronouncements. Instead, they emerged organically from the narrative, allowing the listeners to draw their own conclusions. You would see how greed led to hunger, how boastfulness led to humiliation, or how kindness was ultimately rewarded. Imagine the joy of discovering a profound truth through a moment of shared laughter, the lesson sinking in without the rigidity of formal instruction. This inductive learning approach was highly effective, fostering critical thinking and moral reasoning in a subtle, engaging way. You might find it a refreshing alternative to didactic lectures, allowing for a deeper, more personal internalization of values. The fables often served as a subtle form of social commentary, gently challenging authority or satirizing undesirable behaviors within the community, all under the guise of an entertaining story. This allowed for social critique without direct confrontation, maintaining harmony within the group. There's a peculiar truth. The most profound lessons often emerged from the most absurd situations, proving that wisdom can be found in unexpected places. The scholarly community often explores how these tales provided a safe outlet for expressing societal anxieties and challenging established norms, contributing to social cohesion by allowing for controlled dissent. You'd likely be impressed by the sophisticated psychological understanding embedded within these seemingly simple stories. The repetitive nature of many trickster tales, with their familiar plot structures and recurring character traits, contributed to their comforting effect. You would anticipate the spider's next clever scheme or the tortoise's inevitable triumph, creating a sense of predictability that was soothing in a world of uncertainties. Imagine the comfort of knowing that even when things went wrong in the story, a lesson would ultimately be learned, and a sense of balance would be restored. This inherent order within the narrative provided a psychological anchor, a reminder that even chaos could lead to understanding. You might find this comforting predictability a stark contrast to the often unpredictable and chaotic nature of your modern entertainment. The shared laughter and collective sighs of relief that accompanied these tales fostered a strong sense of communal bonding, reinforcing the idea that they were all in this journey of life together, navigating its absurdities and learning its lessons. One lesser-known fact is that many of these humorous stories were often adapted and localized, incorporating specific landmarks, animals, or even contemporary events into the ancient narratives, making them feel perpetually fresh and relevant to the audience. You'd probably find this organic evolution of stories a fascinating testament to their living nature. As the elder storyteller recounted the mishaps and triumphs of the trickster, you would feel a release of everyday anxieties, a lightness of spirit that prepared you for a peaceful night's rest. The humor provided a therapeutic outlet, allowing for a healthy processing of life's imperfections and absurdities. Imagine going to sleep with a chuckle still lingering in your mind, the worries of the day gently supplanted by the playful wisdom of the fables. This was a form of psychological cleansing, ensuring that negative thoughts and stresses did not accompany you into sleep. You might find this intentional use of humor for well-being a powerful and effective ancient practice. The tales often ended with a subtle moral, a proverb, or a question, inviting further reflection and discussion, but always delivered with a gentle touch, never heavy-handed. This soft landing allowed the wisdom to settle naturally within the listener's consciousness, rather than being forced upon them. There's a humorous thought. They probably didn't need self-help books when they had these stories, which offered far more enduring and relatable life lessons. The continuing study of these humorous tales often reveals layers of social commentary and psychological insight that challenge modern perceptions of ancient cultures as purely serious or primitive. You'd likely be struck by the timelessness of the human condition, as reflected in these ancient comedic narratives. The comforting ritual of sharing these humorous fables and trickster tales, night after night, offered a powerful sense of community and a gentle reminder that life, even with its challenges, held moments of joy and absurdity worth savoring. You would drift off to sleep, perhaps with a mischievous smile on your face, knowing that wisdom could be found in the most unexpected places and that a good laugh was as vital as any lesson. This was the truly enchanting Pillow Talk past, a gentle stream of laughter and insight that ensured you went to bed with a light heart and a mind receptive to pleasant dreams. The tales provided a sweet, digestible morsel of truth, perfectly suited for the twilight hours, ensuring that the comfort of the story lingered long into your slumber. As the last vestiges of twilight surrendered to the deep indigo of the African night, a new symphony would subtly emerge. Forming an integral part of the Pillow Talk past, you would become acutely aware of the rhythms of the night, a tapestry of natural sounds and human murmurs that envelop the storytelling ritual in a profound sense of peace. Imagine the distant hum of crickets, a continuous, soothing thrum against the stillness, punctuated by the occasional rustle of leaves or the soft call of a nocturnal bird. These sounds were not mere background noise. They were characters in the evening's narrative, weaving themselves into the very fabric of the communal experience. Unlike your modern reliance on artificial soundscapes or noise-canceling headphones, these ancient listeners found comfort and immersion in the authentic sounds of their environment. You might be surprised at how quickly your own senses would sharpen, tuning into this organic symphony. Historians still debate the extent to which these natural rhythms consciously influence the cadences of oral storytelling, but the symbiotic relationship between narrative and environment is evident in many ancient cultures. You'd likely find a surprising meditative quality in this raw, unmediated auditory experience. The gentle crackle of the communal fire, if one was present, provided a central rhythmic element. You would observe the flickering flames, casting dancing shadows on the faces of the listeners, and hear the soft hiss and pop of burning wood. This was the heartbeat of the gathering, a primal sound that connected humanity to its earliest origins, offering both warmth and a visual focal point in the deepening darkness. Imagine the hypnotic effect of the fire, its shifting patterns mirroring the flow of the story, creating a sense of dynamic stillness. This element of fire contributed profoundly to the overall comfort and security of the gathering, offering protection from unseen elements and providing a source of light by which to see the storyteller's subtle gestures. You might compare it to the ambient glow of your electronic devices, but with a living, breathing energy that no screen can replicate. It's a humorous thought, trying to explain the magic of a simple fire to someone accustomed to instant, electric light. One fascinating, though often overlooked, detail is that the specific types of wood used for these fires were sometimes chosen for their scent, adding an olfactory layer to the sensory richness of the storytelling experience. You'd probably find the combination of sight, sound, and smell to be a deeply immersive experience, far beyond your typical audio consumption. Beyond the natural sounds, there were the subtle human rhythms that permeated the space. You would hear the soft, synchronized breathing of the audience, a collective inhalation and exhalation that subtly deepened as the story unfolded. Imagine 100 breaths moving as one, a silent testament to the shared focus and profound connection within the group. This unconscious physiological synchronicity fostered a powerful sense of unity, a primal bonding that transcended individual differences. This was the essence of communal pillow talk, a shared breath before slumber. You might find it a strangely intimate experience. This collective physiological harmony, a stark contrast to the individual rhythms of your modern, often isolated, existence. The occasional soft rustle of a mat as someone shifted position, or the quiet murmur of a child settling deeper into a parent's embrace, added to the authenticity of the soundscape. Never jarring, always blending into the overall serenity. There's a peculiar truth. The absence of amplified noise forced a greater sensitivity to these subtle human sounds, fostering a deeper empathy within the community. The careful attention to silence by the storyteller, pausing for effect or allowing a particularly profound thought to resonate, also became a crucial rhythmic element, often as powerful as the spoken word itself. You'd likely be struck by the intentionality of these silences, rarely experienced in your fast-paced, constantly noisy world. The rhythmic quality of the storyteller's voice itself was perhaps the most crucial element in this nocturnal symphony. You would notice the ebb and flow of their speech, the deliberate pauses, the rising and falling inflections, all contributing to a mesmerizing cadence. Imagine the voice acting as a gentle current, carrying you effortlessly downstream, allowing your mind to relax and your consciousness to drift. This wasn't just storytelling, it was a form of auditory meditation, a guided journey into a state of profound calm. The rhythmic repetition of certain phrases or the steady beat of a recurring refrain acted like a lullaby, subtly easing the listener towards sleep. You might find it a surprisingly effective method for inducing relaxation, far more organic than prescribed sleep aids. This mastery of vocal rhythm was a hallmark of the skilled elder, their voice a conduit to a deeper, more peaceful state of being. One lesser-known aspect is the occasional incorporation of soft hand clapping or gentle foot tapping by the storyteller, or even the audience, providing a subtle percussive layer that further enhanced the rhythmic immersion. You'd probably find yourself unconsciously swaying or tapping along, drawn into the primal pulse of the narrative. As the tales progressed, and the night deepened, the external sounds would seem to fade even further, replaced by the internal echoes of the story and the comforting rhythms of the collective presence. You would feel a profound sense of inner quietude, a gentle unwinding of the day's tensions, as the rhythms of the night and the narrative synchronized with your own internal clock. Imagine your mind being gently cleared of clutter, leaving only the resonant truths of the stories to settle in your consciousness. This wasn't merely about falling asleep, it was about achieving a state of restful awareness, where the wisdom of the ancestors could truly sink in. You might find this intentional cultivation of inner peace a powerful counterpoint to your often overstimulated daily life. The interplay between the active listening required by the narrative and the passive absorption induced by the rhythms created a unique cognitive state, allowing for both intellectual engagement and profound relaxation. There's a humorous thought. They likely never had to contend with the jarring intrusion of a notification alert in the middle of a profound narrative moment. The seamless integration of environmental sounds, human presence, and vocal artistry created an immersive experience that transcended mere storytelling, becoming a form of communal healing and spiritual grounding. Scholars still explore the neurobiological effects of rhythmic storytelling on the human brain, suggesting ancient practices intuitively understood principles of relaxation and memory consolidation. You'd likely be struck by the holistic approach to well-being embedded in these nightly rituals. The enduring comfort derived from these rhythms of the night lay in their predictability and their profound connection to the natural world. You would drift off to sleep, enveloped in a symphony of ancient sounds, your mind soothed by the steady beat of the fire, the distant hum of the earth, and the gentle cadence of the storyteller's voice. This was the ultimate pillow talk past, a lullaby composed of the very essence of ancient Africa, ensuring that you went to bed with a sense of profound calm and an intimate connection to the timeless pulse of existence. The pervasive sense of tranquility, a gentle current carrying you into dreams, was a testament to the powerful, soothing rituals that permeated these communal gatherings. As the rhythms of the night settled into a comforting pattern, guiding you deeper into a state of peaceful receptivity, the narratives would weave an even more intricate tapestry, connecting individual lives to the vastness of the cosmos. You would find yourself immersed in stories that not only explained the origins of humanity, but also its profound relationship with the stars, the moon, and the unseen forces of the universe. This was a world woven, not just from the threads of daily life, but from the shimmering filaments of celestial bodies and ancestral spirits, creating a sense of boundless connection. Imagine the profound comfort of knowing that your existence was not isolated, but intimately intertwined with the grandeur of the heavens and the wisdom of those who came before. This was a far cry from your often dislocated sense of self in a sprawling, impersonal world. Instead, it offered an encompassing embrace of belonging. You might chuckle at the thought of cosmic GPS embedded in their myths, but in essence, these stories provided a deeply meaningful orientation within the universe. Historians still debate the specific astronomical knowledge possessed by various ancient African cultures, but their rich celestial mythologies point to keen observation and profound reverence for the night sky. You'd likely feel a humbling sense of your own smallness, yet also a profound connection. Beneath such an expansive, star-dusted canvas, the constellations were not merely distant points of light. They were living characters in the stories, embodying heroes, deities, or significant events from the primordial past. You would learn about specific star patterns representing ancient hunters, or benevolent spirits, or even the outlines of sacred animals. Imagine tracing these celestial figures in the velvet darkness above, each one a visual mnemonic for a beloved tale, a constant reminder of your heritage and the stories that shaped it. This integration of astronomy and narrative made the night sky a dynamic, interactive textbook, constantly reaffirming the shared cultural worldview. It provided a powerful sense of order in the seemingly chaotic expanse above, making the infinite feel noble and comforting. You might find it a strangely beautiful way to understand the universe, far more poetic than your scientific charts and diagrams. There's a humorous thought: they probably never worried about light pollution obscuring their celestial storyboards. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the way certain celestial phenomena, like meteor showers or eclipses, were interpreted not as random events, but as direct communications from the ancestors or divine beings, further deepening the cosmic connection. You'd probably be struck by the sheer imaginative power required to imbue every aspect of their environment with such profound meaning. The narratives often emphasized the cyclical nature of time, mirroring the consistent movements of the sun, moon, and stars. You would hear stories of creation and destruction, life and death, and renewal, all reinforcing the idea that existence was a continuous, unfolding process. Imagine the immense comfort of knowing that even in the face of loss or change, there was a predictable pattern, a promise of return and regeneration. This cyclical worldview offered a profound antidote to existential anxieties, providing a sense of enduring hope and meaning. You might find it a soothing contrast to your linear, future-oriented understanding of time, which often brings with it a sense of urgency and pressure. The stories taught that death was not an end, but a transition, a return to the ancestral realm, further connecting the living to the cosmic cycle. This understanding of interconnectedness transcended physical boundaries, linking all life forms, natural elements, and celestial bodies into a single, cohesive entity. It's a bit like seeing yourself as a single thread in an infinitely vast and beautiful tapestry. The scholarly community often explores how these ancient cosmologies fostered a deep ecological awareness, where humanity was seen as an integral part of nature, not separate from it. You'd likely be impressed by the profound environmental wisdom embedded within these seemingly simple narratives. The ancestral spirits themselves were an integral part of this woven world, not distant, abstract figures, but active participants in the daily lives of the community. You would hear stories of ancestors offering guidance in dreams, or intervening in times of crisis, or presiding over important rituals. Imagine living in a world where your lineage stretched not just back through a few generations, but into a timeless realm, with your forebears watching over you, guiding your path. This pervasive sense of ancestral presence provided immense psychological support and a powerful ethical framework, as one's actions were always accountable to those who came before. You might find this concept of constant ancestral oversight a little daunting at first, used to your individual autonomy, but it also offered an unparalleled sense of belonging and protection. The narratives often reinforce the importance of remembering and honoring the ancestors through specific rituals and offerings, ensuring the continued flow of their blessings. There's a humorous thought. They probably didn't need to worry about legacy projects or creating a digital footprint when their existence was already eternally woven into the communal narrative. The deep connection to ancestors also meant that personal identity was profoundly tied to the collective, finding meaning not just in individual achievements, but in the perpetuation of the family and community line. You'd probably feel an unparalleled sense of communal responsibility, a far cry from modern individualism. The stories provided a comforting framework for understanding the unseen forces that shaped their world. You would hear about spirits of the forest, or water deities, or benevolent forces that influenced harvest and fertility. Imagine a world alive with unseen intelligences, each with its own story, its own character, interacting with the human realm. This rich spiritual landscape made the world feel vibrant, mysterious, and imbued with profound meaning, offering explanations for both good fortune and hardship. This was a far cry from a purely materialistic worldview. Instead, it offered a spiritual depth that enriched every aspect of life. You might find it a strangely compelling way to interpret the unpredictable nature of existence, providing comfort through narrative explanation. The elder storyteller, in weaving these tales, acted as a spiritual guide, helping the community navigate the complexities of the unseen realm and maintain harmony with it. One lesser-known fact is that certain narratives were only told during specific celestial alignments or at particular times of the year, enhancing their power and significance by linking them directly to cosmic events. You'd probably be struck by the meticulous cultural timing of these storytelling rituals, demonstrating a deep awareness of celestial cycles. As the stories continued to unfold, weaving together the celestial, the ancestral, and the earthly, you would feel an overwhelming sense of cosmic coherence. Your individual existence would feel deeply embedded in this grand, sacred design, providing an immense sense of peace and purpose. This was the ultimate pillow talk past, a gentle lullaby that connected your very breath to the breath of the universe, ensuring that you went to sleep with a mind filled not with anxieties, but with the profound comfort of belonging to a truly woven world. The narratives provided a final, reassuring embrace of understanding, allowing you to drift into slumber knowing that you were inextricably linked to the stars above and the spirits of your lineage below, a comfort that transcended the fleeting concerns of daily life. Section 10. Having journeyed through the cosmic tapestry woven by ancient narratives, your mind would gently shift from the vastness of the universe to the intimate warmth of the family compound, the setting for countless nights of pillow talk past. You would feel the comfort of closeness, the reassuring presence of kin, as the stories echoed not just in the open air, but within the confines of mud brick walls or tightly woven straw huts. Imagine the subtle glow of a small, carefully tended hearth, casting dancing shadows on the faces of your immediate family, parents, siblings, perhaps aunts, uncles, and cousins all gathered within the shared living space. This was the most intimate setting for storytelling, where the narratives were tailored to the specific needs and experiences of the household, reinforcing bonds and transmitting familial wisdom. You might compare it to your modern family movie night, but with a living, breathing narrative that directly connected to your own lineage. Historians still debate the precise balance between communal and familial storytelling, but it is clear that both played crucial roles in the transmission of culture and knowledge. You'd likely feel an unparalleled sense of belonging and security within these intimate gatherings, a stark contrast to the often fragmented nature of modern family interactions. Within the hearth's gentle warmth, the atmosphere was one of profound peace and shared vulnerability. You would observe the relaxed postures, the soft breaths, the quiet contentment that settled over everyone as the day's labor receded. The stories told here were often more personal, focusing on ancestral histories unique to the family, or cautionary tales specifically designed to guide the young ones within that particular lineage. Imagine hearing about the triumphs and trials of your own great-grandparents, their struggles and successes made vivid and real through the spoken word, creating a tangible connection to your immediate heritage. This direct link to personal history made the lessons of the past incredibly relevant and impactful. You might find it a strangely comforting thought that your personal narrative was part of a larger, ongoing family saga. There's a humorous thought. They probably had their own versions of family secrets that were only revealed through the nuanced telling of certain stories, never through blunt exposition. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect was the specific designation of storytelling duties within the family, with certain members known for their ability to tell particular types of stories or recount specific genealogies. You'd probably find this specialized knowledge within the family structure quite intriguing, highlighting the value placed on oral memory. The physical closeness of the family unit within the compound fostered an unparalleled sense of security. You would feel the gentle touch of a loved one, the soft weight of a child's head on your shoulder, the reassuring presence of shared warmth against the cool night air. In a world without the pervasive artificial light of your modern homes, the intimate darkness intensified the sensory experience, making the storyteller's voice the singular focal point. This intimate setting allowed for a deeper emotional resonance, as the stories were imbued with the love and trust inherent within the family unit. You might find it a little overwhelming at first, this constant physical proximity, but soon you'd understand the profound comfort it offered, a tangible sense of being protected and cherished. This was not merely social interaction, it was a form of communal self-care, with stories acting as a soothing balm for the stresses of daily life. The hearth, often the center of the living space, symbolized not just physical warmth, but also the emotional heart of the family, where stories were kindled and kept alive. Researchers still explore the role of oxytocin release in group bonding activities, and it's plausible that these intimate storytelling sessions fostered strong neurochemical responses that deepened familial affection. You'd likely be struck by the simplicity and profound effectiveness of these ancient methods of connection. The narrative shared around the hearth often served a deeply practical purpose, beyond mere entertainment. You would hear about traditional remedies for illnesses, the best times for planting and harvesting, or the subtle signs of changing weather patterns, all woven into engaging stories. Imagine learning vital survival skills and practical knowledge not from a dry manual, but from an enthralling tale, making it easier to remember and apply. This integrated learning approach was highly efficient, ensuring that essential information was transmitted effectively across generations. You might find it a far more intuitive and engaging way to absorb information than your formal educational systems. The stories also reinforce proper social conduct within the family, illustrating the consequences of disobedience or the rewards of cooperation through vivid examples. This gentle guidance, embedded in narrative, helps shape the moral character of the younger members without resorting to harsh reprimands. There's a peculiar truth. Even serious lessons were delivered with a narrative flair that made them palatable and memorable. The consistency of these family narratives, repeated over years, created a shared history and a common language that strengthened internal family bonds, making each member feel part of a unique and enduring lineage. You probably recognize the timeless patterns of family dynamics played out in these ancient tales. As the stories unfolded within the intimate confines of the family compound, you would feel a deep sense of psychological safety. The familiar voices, the known presence of loved ones, and the predictable rhythm of the narratives created a cocoon of comfort, shielding you from the anxieties of the outside world. Imagine going to sleep feeling utterly secure, your mind filled not with worries, but with the gentle echoes of your family's history and wisdom. This profound sense of security was a vital component of the pillow talk past, allowing for truly restorative sleep. You might find it a stark contrast to the often fragmented and stressful end to your own modern days, where the mind continues to churn with external stimuli. The stories, whether humorous or serious, ultimately aim to soothe and prepare the individual for restful slumber, ensuring that the subconscious was nourished by positive and familiar narratives. One interesting, though less discussed, aspect is the role of whispering or very soft voices when a particularly sensitive or secret family story was being told, further enhancing the intimacy and sense of shared confidence. You'd probably be captivated by the subtle vocal shifts, signaling moments of profound trust and vulnerability within the family circle. The comforting ritual of storytelling within the family compound was more than just a nightly activity, it was the very essence of home. You would drift off to sleep, cradled by the voices of your loved ones, your mind filled with the echoes of shared history, laughter, and wisdom. This was the truest form of pillow talk past, a gentle, intimate connection that ensured you went to bed feeling cherished, secure, and deeply rooted in the enduring legacy of your family. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace, ensuring that even in dreams, the warmth of the hearth and the love of kin would accompany you. Having found solace within the intimate warmth of the family hearth, your mind would gently broaden its focus, understanding that even the most cherished stories were not static entities. You would begin to perceive how narratives, like the very people who carried them, were constantly in motion, adapting, and evolving with the shifting sands of time and the grand migrations across the vast African landscape. Imagine a story not as a fixed text, but as a living river, subtly changing its course, incorporating new tributaries, yet always flowing towards the same essential sea of truth and wisdom. This inherent adaptability was a hallmark of oral traditions, allowing them to remain relevant and resonant across generations and geographical boundaries. You might compare it to a software update, but one that is performed organically and collectively without the need for a digital download. Historians still debate the specific mechanisms by which these narratives changed and adapted, but the evidence of their flexibility and resilience is undeniable. You'd likely find this dynamic nature of storytelling a fascinating contrast to the rigid, unchanging nature of your printed books. As communities migrated, whether due to environmental changes, search for new resources, or the pressures of conflict, their stories traveled with them, becoming cultural anchors in new territories. You would hear how a tale originally set in a lush forest might subtly incorporate elements of a dry savanna, or how characters from one region might gain new characteristics when introduced to a different cultural context. Imagine the sheer ingenuity required to adapt ancient narratives to new realities, ensuring their continued relevance and power. This process of relocalization was not seen as a distortion, but as a vital act of cultural continuity, making the story speak to the immediate experiences of the listeners. You might find it a brilliant strategy for cultural preservation, allowing for both tradition and innovation. There's a humorous thought. They probably didn't have to worry about cultural appropriation as much as cultural adaptation, a more fluid and less contentious process. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the role of intercommunity exchanges, where storytellers from different regions would meet and share their versions of common myths, leading to a rich cross-pollination of narratives and motifs. You'd probably be struck by the sheer volume of oral data transfer happening across vast distances without any technological assistance. The shifting sands of time also brought new experiences, new challenges, and new wisdom that inevitably found their way into the narrative fabric. You would hear about a heroic journey that now incorporated elements of a recent famine, or a cautionary tale that reflected a contemporary social dilemma. Imagine the stories acting as a living chronicle, constantly updated with the collective experiences of the community, ensuring that the past remained intimately connected to the present. This ongoing process of incorporation ensured that the oral tradition remained a vibrant and evolving repository of collective memory, always reflecting the current realities while grounding them in ancestral wisdom. You might find this organic process of historical recording a far more personal and empathetic form of history than your objective, fact-driven accounts. The elder storyteller, acting as a cultural editor, had the subtle responsibility of weaving these new threads into the ancient tapestry without disrupting its core integrity. This delicate balance between preservation and innovation was a hallmark of their craft. There's a peculiar truth. The truth of the story was not fixed, but lay in its enduring relevance and its ability to continually offer guidance and solace. The scholarly world continues to explore how oral traditions, despite their inherent fluidity, manage to maintain remarkable structural and thematic consistency over millennia. You'd likely be impressed by the sophisticated mnemonic devices and narrative frameworks that allowed for such long-term preservation despite constant adaptation. The evolution of ancient African stories unfolded at a pace so gradual that only the most attentive listener, spanning generations, could discern the shifts. These were not abrupt changes, but subtle inflections, small variations in phrasing, emphasis, or structure that accumulated slowly over time like sediment layering the banks of a quiet river. You could imagine comparing the same tale told 500 years apart and realizing that, while its outer garment had changed, its heart still pulsed with the same rhythm. This slow transformation reflected an extraordinary patience, a trust in time, a belief that meaning was not diminished by adaptation, but rather strengthened by it. In a world where information is revised, deleted, or overwritten with alarming speed, the deliberate tempo of oral tradition would feel like a balm, a reminder that some truths need no rush to endure. The coexistence of multiple versions of the same story within and across communities further enriched this tradition. Variations were not seen as errors, but as expressions of diversity, each narrative shaped by the voice of the storyteller and the character of the audience. One version might emphasize morality, another humor, another the mystical. Together, they formed a mosaic of shared cultural meaning. This fluidity allowed for a dynamic relationship between the tale and its tellers, with the audience playing an invisible yet vital role in its evolution. Their reactions, their silences, even the glint of recognition in their eyes could subtly shape how a story was told, inviting a dialogue that went beyond words. Unlike passive consumption, this was a deeply interactive form of cultural transmission, rooted in presence and shared humanity. What gave these evolving narratives their enduring strength was their ability to reflect the inner journey of those who listened. They weren't just records of events, they were mirrors for the soul, evolving in tandem with the needs, hopes, and fears of the people. Through them, generations saw their own struggles echoed in the past, finding solace in the realization that they were not alone in their uncertainties. Even as the world changed, the stories remained relevant not by staying the same, but by remaining true to their essence while bending gently with time. This taught a subtle, but profound lesson, that identity need not be rigid to be strong, that continuity and change could coexist without contradiction. And so, as night fell and the stories wove their way through time, you would feel cradled by this fluid wisdom. The knowledge that your own experiences might one day join this lineage, passed on with reverence and shaped by future voices, offered both peace and purpose. The gentle truth embedded in these stories was not just in what they said, but in how they survived resilient, adaptive, yet always familiar. They whispered a quiet assurance, even in change, you belong. And with that sense of belonging, you would close your eyes not with fear, but with gratitude, carried into sleep by the comforting current of a story that never truly ends. Having explored the dynamic nature of narratives that shifted with time and migration, your attention would now subtly focus on the unspoken elements that enrich the pillow talk past. You would begin to perceive that storytelling in ancient Africa was far more than just words. It was a profound interplay of nonverbal cues, shared understandings, and an unspoken language that transcended literal meaning, deepening the immersive experience for every listener. Imagine trying to convey a complex emotion or a nuanced moral lesson using only words, devoid of facial expressions, gestures, or the subtle nuances of human connection. It would feel strangely incomplete, wouldn't it? For these ancient storytellers, every movement, every glance, Every moment of silence was a deliberate stroke in their narrative artistry. You might find it a fascinating study in communication, observing how much could be conveyed without a single spoken sentence. Historians still debate the precise semiotics of ancient African nonverbal communication, but its vital role in oral traditions is widely acknowledged. You'd likely be amazed at the depth of understanding that could be achieved through this silent language, a stark contrast to your text-heavy, often emotionally ambiguous digital exchanges. The storyteller's eyes, often imbued with the wisdom of years, played a crucial role in establishing connection and conveying emotion. You would observe their gaze sweeping across the circle, making momentary contact with each listener, drawing them into the shared imaginative space. Imagine the powerful intimacy of meeting the storyteller's gaze, feeling directly addressed, as if the story was being told solely for you. This direct eye contact fostered a sense of personal engagement and trust, deepening the emotional resonance of the narrative. It allowed the storyteller to gauge the audience's reception, subtly adjusting their delivery based on the collective mood. You might find this direct, unmediated connection profoundly impactful, a stark contrast to the anonymity of consuming media through screens. There's a humorous thought: they likely didn't need audience analytics when they had direct eye contact and immediate communal feedback. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the way the storyteller might use their gaze to direct attention, perhaps to a particular individual when a lesson was especially relevant to them, or to a specific part of the physical environment that mirrored an element of the tale. You'd probably find this subtle guidance a clever way to personalize the communal experience. Beyond the eyes, the storyteller's body language and gestures spoke volumes. You would see their hands subtly mimic the actions of a character, perhaps the flight of a bird or the stealthy crawl of a leopard, adding a visual layer to the spoken narrative. Imagine the expressive power of a raised eyebrow conveying skepticism, or a slight shrug suggesting resignation, all without the need for additional words. These gestures were not mere embellishments, they were integral components of the story, serving to clarify meaning, build tension, or elicit emotional responses. This holistic approach to communication engaged the listeners on a multi-sensory level, making the stories more vivid and memorable. You might find it a liberating way to express yourself, relying less on verbal precision and more on intuitive physical cues. The very posture of the storyteller, whether leaning in conspiratorially or sitting upright with gravitas, also conveyed important nuances about the nature of the tale being told. There's a peculiar truth. The body itself became an instrument of narrative, a living bridge between the abstract world of words and the tangible world of experience. The scholarly world continues to explore how these nonverbal cues were culturally encoded and transmitted, forming a sophisticated system of communication as rich as any spoken language. You'd likely be struck by the elegance and efficiency of such an intuitive communication system. The audience, too, participated in this nonverbal dialogue, offering subtle cues that the storyteller intuitively understood. You would observe a collective nod of understanding, a shared sigh of empathy, or a moment of palpable stillness that indicated deep engagement. Imagine the silent communication flowing between teller and listener, a feedback loop that shaped the unfolding narrative in real time. This unspoken interaction created a dynamic, responsive storytelling experience, far removed from the passive consumption of modern media. You might find this active, nonverbal participation incredibly engaging, fostering a deeper sense of co-creation in the narrative. The shared emotions, mirrored in the faces of those around you, reinforce the sense of communal bonding, turning individual listening into a collective emotional journey. This collective empathy, fostered by shared narrative and nonverbal cues, was a powerful force for social cohesion. One less commonly highlighted aspect is the role of mimicry within the audience, where children or even adults might subtly imitate the storyteller's gestures or expressions, unconsciously deepening their connection to the narrative and practicing their own future storytelling skills. You probably find this organic learning process incredibly effective and intuitive. Perhaps the most profound nonverbal element was the shared understanding that transcended explicit articulation. You would perceive the deeper meanings, the subtle allusions, and the unspoken moral truths that were woven into the fabric of the narratives, often without a single word directly stating them. Imagine a story where the silence after a powerful statement conveyed more meaning than any lengthy explanation, allowing the truth to settle deeply within the listener's consciousness. This reliance on implicit understanding fostered a heightened level of attentiveness and cognitive engagement, encouraging listeners to read between the lines and connect the dots for themselves. You might find this approach to meaning-making incredibly liberating, trusting your own intuition rather than relying on explicit instructions. The stories often served as mnemonic devices for a vast body of unwritten knowledge, activated by these subtle nonverbal cues and shared cultural contexts. There's a humorous thought. They likely never had to explain their jokes or the subtleties of their narratives, as the context and nonverbal delivery did all the work. The scholarly investigation of these implicit meanings often reveals profound philosophical insights and complex social structures that were communicated through the nuanced interplay of words and silence. You'd likely be struck by the intellectual sophistication embedded within these seemingly simple oral traditions, as the stories unfolded, carried not just by words, but by the rich tapestry of nonverbal cues and shared understanding. You would feel a profound sense of connection to the human experience in its rawest, most intimate form. This deeper layer of communication offered a unique form of comfort, knowing that even the unspoken thoughts and emotions were being conveyed and understood within the warmth of the communal embrace. This was the ultimate pillow talk past, a gentle lullaby composed of gestures, glances, and the silent resonance of shared humanity, ensuring that you went to bed with a mind at peace, rich with understandings that transcended mere language. The narratives provided a final, reassuring touch of connection, allowing you to drift into slumber knowing that the world was understood not just through what was said, but through the profound wisdom of what remained unsaid. Having explored the intricate dance of nonverbal cues that enrich ancient African storytelling, your journey into the pillow talk past would now lead you into the mysterious realm where narratives often intertwined with the landscapes of dreams and the interpretations of omens. You would discover that these stories were not merely confined to the waking hours. They seeped into the subconscious, shaping the very fabric of slumber and providing a framework for understanding the messages that emerged from the dream world. Imagine a culture where dreams were not just random neurological phenomena, but potent sources of guidance, warnings, or confirmations of truths around the evening fire. This belief infused nightly sleep with a profound sense of purpose, connecting the individual to the spiritual realm and the wisdom of the ancestors. You might compare it to your modern reliance on self-help books or therapy, but with a deeply integrated, mystical approach to psychological well-being. Historians still debate the specific interpretations of dream symbolism across diverse African cultures, but the universal importance of dreams as a source of knowledge is widely documented. You'd likely feel a humbling sense of mystery and wonder at this profound connection between narrative and the inner world of sleep. The stories told before sleep often contained elements that subtly primed the mind for dreaming. You would hear about a hero's dream journey, or a character receiving a crucial message in their sleep, or the interpretation of a symbolic vision. Imagine going to bed with these narratives echoing in your mind, setting the stage for your own nocturnal adventures and encouraging a receptive state for symbolic communication. This intentional preparation for dreaming was a deliberate part of the pillow talk past, designed to deepen the individual's connection to the spiritual dimension of their existence. It was a form of gentle hypnosis, guiding the mind towards a state where the boundaries between reality and the mystical blurred. You might find this active engagement with the dream world a fascinating contrast to your often passive experience of sleep. There's a humorous thought. They probably didn't need sleep tracking apps when their dreams were so richly integrated into their waking lives. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the specific inclusion of certain chants or repetitive phrases within bedtime stories that were believed to enhance dream recall or facilitate communication with ancestral spirits during sleep. You'd probably be struck by the intentionality of these pre-sleep rituals, far beyond mere relaxation. Beyond dreams, the stories also provided a framework for interpreting omens and signs encountered in the waking world. You would hear tales where a particular bird's call, the movement of an animal, or a strange cloud formation was interpreted as a message, a warning, or a blessing from the divine or ancestral realm. Imagine living in a world where every natural phenomenon held potential meaning, where the environment itself was a living, breathing messenger. This heightened awareness of signs and symbols fostered a deeper connection to nature and a sense of constant dialogue with the unseen forces that shaped their lives. You might find it a strangely comforting thought that the world was always speaking to you, if only you knew how to listen. This interpretive framework, passed down through narrative, helped individuals navigate uncertainty and make decisions in a world without scientific predictions or widespread literacy. It's a bit like having a communal fortune cookie delivered nightly, but with far deeper cultural and spiritual implications. The scholarly community often explores how these systems of divination and omen interpretation provided a psychological sense of control and agency in the face of unpredictable natural events. You'd likely be impressed by the sophisticated, cognitive frameworks developed to understand and respond to environmental cues. The elder storyteller often acted as a guide in this interpretive landscape, weaving narratives that explain the significance of various dreams and omens, and teaching the younger generation how to read the signs of their world. You would learn not just the stories, but the methodology for understanding the deeper messages embedded within them. Imagine the wisdom of an elder explaining that a dream of water might symbolize cleansing or abundance, depending on its context, all within the comforting flow of a narrative. This personalized guidance helped individuals to make sense of their internal and external experiences, fostering a greater sense of coherence and control over their lives. You might find this integrated approach to mental and spiritual well-being a stark contrast to your fragmented modern healthcare systems. There's a peculiar truth. The ambiguity inherent in many omens allowed for multiple interpretations, fostering communal discussion and often leading to shared wisdom rather than rigid dogma. The consistency of these narrative interpretations across generations created a shared language for understanding the mysterious, further binding the community together. You'd probably appreciate the nuanced flexibility within their interpretive systems. The comforting ritual of linking stories to dreams and omens offered a profound sense of continuity and meaning. You would drift off to sleep, knowing that the narratives heard during waking hours would continue their work in the subconscious, providing guidance and insight through the veil of dreams. Imagine the peace of mind that came from believing that even in sleep, you are still connected to the wisdom of your ancestors and the divine order of the universe. This eliminated the fear of the unknown, transforming the night into a realm of potential elation and comforting messages. You might find it a powerful antidote to your own restless nights, often plagued by unresolved thoughts and anxieties. The stories, in this context, acted as psychological anchors, grounding the individual in a shared spiritual reality even as their minds journeyed into the ethereal landscapes of sleep. One lesser-known fact is that some specific dreams or omens would trigger the retelling of particular stories, emphasizing the dynamic and reciprocal relationship between lived experience and narrative tradition. You'd probably be fascinated by how seamlessly daily life informed the storytelling repertoire. As the tales of dreams and omens gently unfolded, carrying you through the liminal spaces between waking and sleeping, you would feel a profound sense of spiritual connection and inner peace. The world, both seen and unseen, would feel integrated and meaningful, your own existence a vital thread in its mystical tapestry. This was the ultimate pillow talk past, a gentle lullaby composed of cosmic whispers and ancestral guidance, ensuring that you went to bed with a mind at ease, ready to embrace the revelations of the night and the wisdom of the dawn. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace of understanding, allowing you to drift into slumber knowing that even in the mysterious realm of dreams, the comforting echoes of your heritage would continue to guide your way. Having traversed the mystical landscapes of dreams and omens, your attention would now gently turn to a more practical yet equally profound aspect of the pillow talk past, the subtle, almost invisible process by which storytelling skills were passed from one generation to the next. You would observe the young apprentice, perhaps a curious child perched near the elder, absorbing not just the words of the stories, but the very art of their delivery, the nuances of their rhythm, and the profound wisdom embedded within their pauses. Imagine a learning environment without formal classrooms or textbooks, where education was a living, breathing apprenticeship, nurtured through observation, imitation, and gentle encouragement. This was the informal academy of ancient African oral tradition, where the future of collective memory rested on the eager minds and voices of the young. You might compare it to a modern mentorship, but one that is lifelong and deeply integrated into the fabric of daily life. Historians still debate the specific age at which this apprenticeship began, but it is clear that early exposure and continuous immersion were key to developing the skills of a master storyteller. You'd likely find this organic, hands-on approach to learning remarkably effective, a stark contrast to your often abstract, theoretical education systems. The process began subtly, almost by osmosis. You would notice children, even those too young to fully comprehend the complex narratives, mimicking the elders' gestures, humming along with familiar refrains, or repeating simple phrases. Imagine a child playing, acting out scenes from a beloved tale, unconsciously internalizing the narrative structure and character dynamics. This playful imitation was a crucial first step, building a foundational understanding of storytelling as a performative art. It was a form of active learning, where engagement was fostered through natural curiosity and the desire to participate. In the communal ritual, you might find it a beautiful testament to the innate human capacity for narrative, blossoming naturally when given the right environment. There's a humorous thought: they probably didn't need to worry about screen time for their children when storytelling was the primary form of entertainment and education. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the way elders would subtly encourage this mimicry, perhaps by repeating a phrase or gesture slowly, inviting the child to join in, turning learning into a shared, joyful experience. You'd probably be struck by the gentle, non-coercive nature of this educational approach, fostering a love of learning rather than a fear of failure. As the apprentice grew older, their role would become more active, though still largely informal. You would see them tasked with recounting simpler tales, perhaps to younger children or during less formal gatherings. Imagine the tentative voice of a young person, striving to replicate the elder's cadence, sometimes stumbling, but always encouraged by the patient presence of their manners and the attentive silence of the audience. These early attempts were crucial opportunities for practice, for refining their memory, and for developing their unique storytelling voice. This immediate, real-time feedback, often conveyed through nonverbal cues of approval or gentle correction, was far more effective than written evaluations. You might find it a strangely empowering way to learn, where mistakes were seen as opportunities for growth, not failures. The sheer volume of stories they would hear over their lifetime, repeated night after night, built an unparalleled mental database, an internal library of narrative. This constant immersion was the bedrock of their memory. There's a peculiar truth: the act of telling the story itself was the primary means of memorization, reinforcing the narrative with each performance. The scholarly community often explores the cognitive processes involved in such vast oral memory, noting the use of rhyme, rhythm, and narrative structure as powerful mnemonic aids. You'd likely be impressed by the human brain's capacity for storing complex information when actively engaged in its transmission. The relationship between the elder storyteller and the young apprentice was one of deep respect and profound mentorship. You would observe the patient guidance, the subtle corrections, and the unwavering encouragement that flowed between them, fostering not just skills, but a deep sense of responsibility for the cultural heritage. Imagine the weight of knowing that one day the continuity of your people's stories would rest upon your shoulders, a sacred trust passed down through generations. This sense of stewardship instilled a profound dedication to the craft, far beyond any individual ambition. You might find this concept of collective responsibility a powerful antidote to your individualistic pursuits. The elder would not just teach the stories, but the wisdom embedded within them, the historical context, and the ethical lessons, ensuring that the apprentice understood the profound significance of their role. One lesser-known fact is that some apprentices were chosen not just for their memory or vocal talent, but for their emotional intelligence and empathy, as these qualities were deemed essential for truly moving and connecting with an audience. You'd probably find this emphasis on emotional depth a fascinating consideration in the selection of future storytellers. The ultimate goal of this apprenticeship was not merely to produce a replica of the elder, but to nurture a new voice, a new interpreter of the ancient narratives. You would witness the apprentice gradually integrating their own experiences and perspectives into the telling, subtly infusing the stories with their unique personality while remaining true to the core tradition. Imagine the delicate balance required to innovate while honoring tradition, to make the ancient stories resonate with a contemporary audience while preserving their timeless essence. This organic evolution of storytelling ensured its continued vitality and relevance across changing times. You might find this fluid adaptation a beautiful testament to the resilience of human culture. There's a humorous thought: they probably didn't need to worry about sequels or reboots when every retelling was a fresh interpretation. The communal aspect of the apprenticeship, where the entire village implicitly participated in nurturing the young storyteller, reinforced the idea that storytelling was a shared responsibility, a collective act of cultural perpetuation. Scholars often explore how this informal, community-based education fostered a deep sense of identity and belonging in the young, a far cry from the standardized and often alienating nature of modern schooling. You'd likely be struck by the holistic approach to education, encompassing intellectual, emotional, and social development. As the young apprentice grew into their role, their voice joining the chorus of storytellers across generations, you would feel a profound sense of continuity and reassurance. The comfort of the pillow talk past was not just about the stories themselves, but about the enduring promise of their survival, carried forward by eager young minds. You would drift off to sleep, knowing that the comforting rituals of storytelling would continue, passed on through the loving guidance of elders, ensuring that the light of ancestral wisdom would never dim. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace of hope, allowing you to drift into slumber knowing that the future of your heritage was in capable, loving hands. Having understood the crucial role of the young apprentice in carrying forward the oral tradition, your focus would now settle on the very bedrock of the pillow talk past, the profound and often miraculous power of memory. You would begin to grasp that in a world without written script, memory was not merely a personal faculty, but a communal archive, a living library that held the entirety of a people's history, laws, wisdom, and spiritual beliefs. Imagine the sheer mental capacity required to internalize vast genealogies, intricate myths, complex legal precedents, and detailed medicinal knowledge, all held within the human mind. This was a level of mnemonic mastery almost unimaginable in your paper and digitally reliant world. You might chuckle at the thought of them having RAM upgrades for their brains, but in essence, their lives necessitated an extraordinary development of cognitive recall. Historians still debate the specific techniques employed to achieve such remarkable feats of memory, ranging from rhythmic recitation to the use of mnemonic devices involving specific objects or places. You'd likely find their reliance on active recall a stark contrast to your passive consumption of information, where retrieval is often outsourced to external devices. The act of storytelling itself was the primary mechanism for strengthening and preserving memory. You would perceive each retelling not as a mere performance, but as a deliberate act of recall, a communal exercise in mental consolidation. Imagine the elder storyteller, their mind accessing countless narratives, weaving them together seamlessly, their very act of speaking reinforcing the neural pathways associated with that knowledge. This constant activation of memory pathways ensured that the stories remained vivid and accessible, resistant to the erosion of time. You might find it a brilliant example of use it or lose it in action, applied to the very fabric of culture. This continuous cycle of telling and listening created a robust, multi-layered system of memory, distributed across the community, ensuring that even if one memory faltered, others could provide reinforcement. There's a humorous thought. They probably never worried about cloud storage when their entire cultural heritage was stored in the collective consciousness. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the role of sensory detail and emotional intensity in enhancing memory. Stories that evoked strong emotions or appealed to multiple senses were often the most vividly remembered and accurately transmitted, underscoring the holistic nature of their learning. You'd probably be struck by how deeply integrated emotion and information were in their cognitive processes. The landscape itself often served as a powerful mnemonic device, deeply intertwined with the narratives. You would hear about a specific tree where a hero rested, a particular rock formation that marked a significant battle, or a certain river where a trickster performed a cunning feat. Imagine walking through your environment and having every landmark trigger a story, every path leading you through a tapestry of ancestral deeds. This physical anchoring of narratives transformed the landscape into a living memory aid, making the abstract truths of the stories tangible and rooted in the physical world. You might find this profound connection to place a stark contrast to your often detached, abstract understanding of history. This spatial memory, combined with auditory and emotional cues, created a powerful multimodal learning system that facilitated long-term retention. It's a bit like having a massive, interconnected hyperlink system built into your environment, guiding you through a web of knowledge. The scholarly community often explores how indigenous cartographies were often narrative-based, mapping not just physical space, but also historical events and cultural meanings. You'd likely be impressed by the sophistication of their memory mapping systems. Far beyond your simple GPS coordinates, the communal nature of memory was also a source of immense comfort and resilience. You would feel the collective weight of shared knowledge, knowing that even if your own memory faltered, the stories were held and preserved by the entire community. Imagine the security of knowing that you were part of a vast, interconnected network of minds, all dedicated to the preservation of your shared heritage. This collective memory acted as a powerful safeguard against loss, ensuring the continuity of culture even in the face of immense challenges. You might find this concept of shared intellectual responsibility a refreshing alternative to your individualistic burden of knowledge acquisition. This distributed memory system ensured that no single individual was indispensable, though certain elders held particularly vast repositories. There's a peculiar truth. The vulnerability of individual memory was mitigated by the strength of the collective, making the entire cultural edifice surprisingly robust. The process of communal review and validation during storytelling sessions also played a role in maintaining the accuracy of narratives, with listeners subtly correcting or reinforcing details, acting as a form of peer review. You probably appreciate this organic, decentralized method of knowledge verification. The profound comfort derived from the power of memory lay in its ability to connect the present to the past, to ground individual identity in a rich and enduring history. You would drift off to sleep, your mind filled not with anxieties about forgetting, but with the quiet confidence that the stories, the wisdom, and the very essence of your people were securely held within the living tapestry of collective memory. Imagine the peace of knowing that your own experiences would one day contribute to this vast reservoir of knowledge, becoming part of the enduring story of your lineage. This sense of continuity provided a profound psychological anchor, liberating the mind from the anxieties of impermanence. You might find it a powerful antidote to your own modern fears of obsolescence and the rapid discarding of past knowledge. The stories, constantly retold and reinforced, ensured that the lessons of the ancestors were not just remembered, but lived, shaping values and guiding actions in a tangible way. The scholarly investigation of oral cultures often highlights the profound ways in which memory, far from being a passive receptacle, was an active, creative force, constantly shaping and reshaping understanding. You'd likely be struck by the dynamic interplay between remembering and creating that characterized these ancient traditions. As the comforting echoes of memory gently unfolded, carrying you through the vast archives of the human mind, you would feel a profound sense of peace settling over you. The knowledge that your heritage was preserved not in fragile artifacts, but in the living, breathing minds of your people offered immense solace. This was the ultimate pillow talk past, a gentle lullaby composed of recalled wisdom and enduring history, ensuring that you went to bed with a mind at ease, deeply connected to the unbroken chain of memory that stretched back to the beginning of time. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace of knowing, allowing you to drift into slumber with the comforting assurance that the past was always present, held securely within the collective consciousness. Having contemplated the profound power of memory in preserving the pillow talk past, your focus would now gently shift to an even deeper function of these ancient narratives, their remarkable capacity for healing. You would begin to understand that stories were not just sources of entertainment or education, but powerful tools for communal solace, for processing grief, for resolving conflict, and for restoring balance within the individual and the collective. Imagine a communal gathering where the very act of listening to a story became a therapeutic ritual, a gentle balm for emotional wounds and societal tensions. This was a far cry from your modern individualistic approaches to healing, often relying on isolation or specialized medical intervention. Instead, it offered a holistic, communal embrace of well-being. You might chuckle at the idea of narrative medicine being an ancient practice, but in essence, that's precisely what was happening around the fire. Historians still debate the specific psychological mechanisms by which these stories facilitated healing, but their consistent use in rites of passage, mourning ceremonies, and conflict resolution rituals points to their profound efficacy. You'd likely feel a deep sense of compassion and connection observing these ancient forms of communal support. When grief struck a community, whether through the loss of a loved one or a shared tragedy, the narratives often served as a vital means of processing sorrow and finding solace. You would hear stories of loss and renewal, of journeys to the spirit world, and of the enduring connection between the living and the dead. Imagine the comfort of hearing a narrative that acknowledged your pain, gave meaning to your suffering, and offered a path towards acceptance and continuity. These stories provided a framework for mourning, guiding individuals through the stages of grief within a communal context, ensuring that no one grieved in isolation. You might find this collective approach to sorrow deeply reassuring, a stark contrast to the often isolating experience of grief in your modern world. The narratives often emphasized the cyclical nature of life and death, reminding listeners that loss was a part of a larger, natural order, ultimately leading to renewal. There's a humorous thought: they likely didn't need grief counselors when they had their elders and the comforting embrace of shared stories. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the specific use of certain dirges or lamentations embedded within these mourning narratives, their rhythmic and melodic qualities further enhancing the cathartic release of emotion. You'd probably find the raw, unfiltered expression of grief through shared narrative incredibly powerful. Beyond individual sorrow, stories also played a crucial role in resolving communal conflicts and restoring social harmony. You would hear tales of two warring factions finding peace through negotiation, or of individuals overcoming past grievances to work together for the common good. Imagine a narrative acting as a blueprint for reconciliation, illustrating the wisdom of compromise and the folly of endless strife. These stories provided a powerful moral compass, guiding the community towards ethical behavior and fostering a spirit of cooperation. You might find this narrative-based conflict resolution a remarkably effective alternative to your often adversarial legal systems. The act of sharing these stories in a communal setting allowed for open discussion and reflection, fostering empathy and understanding between disputing parties. This created a space for collective healing, transforming animosity into shared wisdom. There's a peculiar truth. The impartiality of the story, even when reflecting real conflicts, allowed for lessons to be learned without direct accusation or blame. The scholarly community often explores how these narratives provided a socially sanctioned means of expressing grievances and working through tensions, ultimately strengthening social bonds. You'd likely be struck by the sophistication of their social engineering through storytelling. The narratives also served as a form of preventive healing, offering guidance on living in harmony with the environment and within the community, thereby averting potential crises. You would learn about the consequences of disrespecting nature, or the dangers of unchecked ambition, all through engaging, memorable stories. Imagine being guided towards a healthy, balanced life not through rigid rules, but through the compelling examples of narrative characters. This proactive approach to well-being fostered a deep sense of personal responsibility and communal ethics, reducing the likelihood of physical or social ailments. You might find this integrated approach to health, encompassing both physical and social dimensions, far more holistic than your specialized medical practices. The stories provided a constant reinforcement of cultural values that promoted collective welfare, ensuring that individuals understood their role in maintaining the health of the entire community. One less commonly highlighted aspect, the role of healing chants or ritualistic incantations being woven into certain therapeutic narratives, believed to invoke spiritual assistance for physical or emotional ailments. You'd probably find the intertwining of ritual and narrative a powerful demonstration of their integrated worldview. The profound comfort derived from these healing narratives lay in their ability to provide meaning and agency in the face of life's inevitable challenges. You would drift off to sleep, your mind soothed by the knowledge that even in moments of pain or discord, there was a pathway to understanding, resolution, and renewal, revealed through the timeless wisdom of your ancestors. Imagine the peace of mind that came from knowing that your community had a built-in mechanism for collective healing, a narrative embrace that never failed. This eliminated the fear of being overwhelmed by suffering, transforming hardship into an opportunity for growth and connection. You might find it a powerful antidote to your own feelings of isolation or helplessness when confronted with personal or communal crises. The stories, in their very telling, were acts of communal care, ensuring that every individual felt seen, understood, and supported. The scholarly investigation of these healing rituals often reveals complex psychological and social functions, highlighting the profound capacity of narrative to mend the human spirit and strengthen the bonds of community. You'd likely be struck by the deep, intuitive wisdom embedded within these ancient practices, a testament to the enduring power of human connection and storytelling. As the comforting echoes of healing narratives gently unfolded, carrying you through the depths of human experience, you would feel a profound sense of peace settling over you. The knowledge that even in the face of life's inevitable wounds, there was solace and renewal to be found in the shared stories of your people, offered immense comfort. This was the ultimate pillow talk past, a gentle lullaby composed of collective empathy and restorative wisdom, ensuring that you went to bed with a mind at ease, ready to embrace the healing power of shared narrative and the comforting embrace of your community. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace of hope and restoration, allowing you to drift into slumber knowing that even in moments of vulnerability, the strength of your shared stories would sustain you. Having understood the profound, healing power of narratives, your gaze would now naturally lift from the intimacy of the communal circle to the vast, shimmering canvas above, the celestial backdrop that so deeply influenced the themes and imagery. of the pillow talk past, you would begin to perceive that the stories were not merely earthly tales. They were often dialogues with the cosmos, reflecting the movements of the stars, the phases of the moon, and the dance of the planets. Imagine a world where the night sky was not just a distant spectacle but a living, breathing scroll, constantly unfolding new narratives and reaffirming ancient truths. This profound connection to the celestial realm infused the stories with a sense of cosmic significance, rooting human experience within the grand tapestry of the universe. You might compare it to your modern reliance on scientific data for understanding the cosmos, but theirs was a poetic and spiritually resonant interpretation, finding meaning and guidance in the celestial dance. Historians still debate the extent of sophisticated astronomical observation in various ancient African cultures, but the rich body of star lore and celestial myths across the continent speaks volumes about their deep engagement with the night sky. You'd likely feel a humbling sense of wonder, realizing how profoundly the heavens shape their understanding of life and destiny. The very structure of some narratives often mirrored the patterns observed in the night sky. You would hear about cyclical journeys, much like the path of the sun or moon, or characters whose destinies were linked to specific constellations. Imagine a story where the hero's triumph coincided with the appearance of a particular star cluster, imbuing their victory with cosmic significance. This mirroring of celestial patterns provided a sense of divine order and predictability in a world that could often feel chaotic. It offered a comforting reassurance that even in the face of uncertainty, there was an underlying cosmic rhythm that governed all existence. You might find this profound sense of embedded order a powerful antidote to your own feelings of randomness or lack of control in the universe. There's a humorous thought. They probably never worried about astrology apps when their entire cultural narrative was a living, breathing cosmic chart. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the way specific stars or planets were often associated with particular deities or ancestral spirits, making their movements direct communications from the divine realm and influencing the appropriate time for certain rituals or storytelling sessions. You'd probably be struck by the meticulous integration of astronomy, mythology, and daily practice in their lives. The themes embedded within the stories often reflected celestial phenomena, transforming abstract astronomical observations into relatable human experiences. You would hear tales explaining the phases of the moon through the story of a shape-shifting deity, or the appearance of a comet as a harbinger of change, good or ill. Imagine the powerful impact of learning about the cosmos through compelling narratives, where every celestial event was imbued with character and meaning, making the universe feel alive and intimately connected to human affairs. This animistic worldview fostered a deep reverence for the natural world, seeing the heavens as an extension of their own spiritual landscape. You might find it a far more engaging and intuitive way to learn about the universe than your data-driven scientific models. The stories also provided practical guidance based on celestial cycles, such as the best times for hunting, planting, or migration, all woven into memorable narratives. This seamless integration of practical knowledge with spiritual meaning was a hallmark of their oral traditions. There's a peculiar truth. The heavens were not just for looking at. They were for living by, their movements guiding the very rhythm of life. The scholarly community often explores how ancient African societies developed complex calendar systems based on celestial observations, often embedded within their oral narratives, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of time and cycles. You'd likely be impressed by the blend of scientific observation and poetic interpretation in their approach to the cosmos. The act of storytelling under the starlit sky itself fostered a unique form of cosmic connection. You would feel the vastness of the universe above, the ancient stories echoing against the backdrop of eternity, creating a profound sense of continuity. Imagine feeling yourself to be a small, yet significant, part of this boundless existence. Your voice joining the countless voices that had told these tales beneath the same stars for millennia. This experience transcended mere intellectual understanding, touching a deeper, more spiritual part of your being. You might find it a powerful antidote to your often fragmented and isolated existence, reconnecting you to a universal narrative. The shared gaze at the stars during storytelling sessions created a collective sense of awe and wonder, fostering a profound sense of shared humanity and a common destiny under the watchful eyes of the cosmos. This shared experience deepened communal bonds, reminding everyone that they were part of something far greater than themselves. One less commonly highlighted aspect is the role of celestial alignments in determining specific storytelling seasons or the telling of particular sacred narratives, enhancing their power and ensuring their transmission during times of heightened cosmic energy. You'd probably be struck by the meticulous ritual timing that wove human narratives into the grand cosmic dance. The profound comfort derived from the language of stars lay in its ability to provide meaning and predictability. In a world that could often feel arbitrary, you would drift off to sleep, your mind soothed by the knowledge that even in the deepest darkness, the stars provided unchanging beacons of wisdom and guidance, their silent stories continuing to unfold above you. Imagine the peace of knowing that your life, with all its challenges and triumphs, was part of a larger, cosmic narrative, divinely ordained and eternally present. This eliminated the fear of existential meaninglessness, transforming the night into a realm of profound connection and cosmic reassurance. You might find it a powerful antidote to your own anxieties about purpose and significance, offering a sense of innate belonging to a grand design. The stories, in their celestial echoes, ensured that even as you slept, your spirit remained attuned to the timeless rhythms of the universe, providing a deep, continuous source of comfort and guidance. The scholarly investigation of these celestial narratives often reveals intricate cosmologies and ethical systems, highlighting the profound ways in which ancient cultures sought to understand and harmonize with the vastness of existence. You'd likely be struck by the holistic approach to life, where the mundane and the cosmic were seamlessly intertwined, offering a constant source of comfort and meaning. Having gazed upon the celestial tapestry and felt its comforting influence on ancient African narratives, your journey through the Pillow Talk past would now bring you to a powerful realization: the enduring legacies of these storytelling traditions. You would begin to understand that the whispers under the baobab, the tales spun by the hearth, and the wisdom carried in collective memory did not simply vanish into the mists of time. They permeated cultures, shaped identities, and left an indelible mark on the very fabric of modern life, often in ways unseen and unacknowledged. Imagine a world where the echoes of ancient voices still resonate, subtly guiding conversations, informing artistic expressions, and shaping the very structure of communal interaction, even thousands of years later. This is the profound, quiet influence of these oral traditions, a testament to their remarkable resilience and timeless wisdom. You might compare it to the hidden roots of a mighty tree, unseen but vital, continuously nourishing the branches. Above, historians still debate the precise mechanisms by which these ancient narrative structures and themes persist in contemporary African cultures and beyond, but the evidence of their deep-seated influence is overwhelming. You'd likely feel a deep sense of connection to this unbroken chain of human experience, realizing how much of the past continues to live within the present. The most direct legacy lies in the continuation of oral storytelling itself. In many parts of Africa, you would find communities where the tradition of gathering for evening narratives, though perhaps adapted to modern contexts, still thrives. Imagine elders continuing to share tales under electric lights or by the glow of a television, their voices still carrying the ancient rhythms and wisdom, captivating audiences just as their ancestors did. This unbroken lineage ensures that the immediate comfort and cultural transmission of the Pillow Talk past remains a living practice, evolving yet rooted in tradition. You might discover local storytelling festivals, where the artistry of the spoken word is celebrated, drawing audiences eager to connect with their heritage. This vibrant continuation offers a powerful counter-narrative to the idea that modernity necessarily erases tradition. There's a humorous thought: they probably have their own versions of storytelling competitions that would put many spoken word artists to shame. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the way modern African literature, even when written, often draws heavily on the stylistic elements, narrative structures, and thematic concerns of ancient oral traditions, creating a unique and deeply resonant literary form. You'd probably be struck by the seamless fusion of ancient and modern artistic expression. Beyond direct continuation, these ancient storytelling traditions profoundly influenced the development of various art forms. You would perceive their echoes in the rhythmic patterns of traditional music, the symbolic imagery of visual arts, and the dramatic structures of performance rituals. Imagine a dancer whose movements embody the struggles of a mythical hero, or a sculptor whose carvings depict scenes from a creation myth, each artistic expression a direct descendant of the spoken narrative. This deep interrelationship between storytelling and other art forms demonstrates how narratives were not isolated entities, but integral components of a holistic cultural expression. You might find it a compelling argument for the interconnectedness of all creative endeavors. The use of repetitive motifs, call and response patterns, and allegorical figures in various art forms are direct legacies of oral narrative techniques designed to engage audiences and transmit meaning. There's a peculiar truth. The stories lived not just in words, but in the very aesthetic choices of a culture. The scholarly community often explores how these narrative influences shape the form and content of diverse African artistic traditions, providing a rich tapestry of cultural expression. You'd likely be impressed by the profound, pervasive influence of oral traditions across such a broad spectrum of cultural manifestations. The enduring influence of these narratives can also be found in social structures, ethical frameworks, and communal values. You would realize that many contemporary African societies still prioritize communal responsibility, respect for elders, and a deep connection to ancestry, values that were consistently reinforced through the pillow talk. Past. Imagine decision-making processes that subtly reflect the conflict resolution narratives of old, or community practices that honor the wisdom of fables concerning cooperation and justice. These subtle yet powerful influences demonstrate how stories shape not just individual minds, but the very functioning of societies. You might find it a fascinating study in cultural anthropology, observing the long shadow cast by ancient narratives on modern societal norms. This embedded wisdom provides a resilient moral compass, guiding communities through challenges even in rapidly changing environments. One less commonly highlighted aspect is the way proverbial sayings, often condensed wisdom from longer narratives, continue to serve as a vital form of communication and ethical guidance in everyday African discourse, reflecting a deep respect for distilled ancestral knowledge. You'd probably find the efficiency and poetic beauty of these proverbs a powerful testament to the enduring impact of oral tradition. Perhaps most significantly, the pillow talk past has left an enduring legacy on the human spirit itself. You would feel the comfort of knowing that the innate human need for narrative, for connection, and for meaning, which was so beautifully fulfilled by these ancient rituals, continues to resonate within you. Imagine the quiet satisfaction of recognizing universal human experiences, love, loss, courage, humor, echoing through these ancient tales, reminding you of your shared humanity across millennia. This legacy transcends geographical and cultural boundaries, speaking to a fundamental human desire for understanding and belonging that stories uniquely fulfill. You might find it a powerful reminder of the universality of the human condition, beautifully expressed through diverse cultural lenses. The psychological comfort, the sense of security, and the gentle guidance provided by these narratives fostered a resilience and adaptability that continues to inform modern approaches to well-being. There's a peculiar truth. The comforting ritual of shared narrative, once a necessity, remains a profound human need. Even in a technologically advanced world, scholars often explore how these ancient storytelling traditions provide models for fostering community, building empathy, and promoting psychological resilience, offering valuable insights for contemporary challenges. You'd likely be struck by the timeless relevance of these ancient practices for human flourishing. As you contemplate the enduring legacies of the Pillow Talk past, you would feel a profound sense of continuity, a quiet appreciation for the countless voices that have woven the human story through the ages. You would drift off to sleep, your mind filled not just with the tales themselves, but with the comforting knowledge that the power of storytelling, that most ancient and human of rituals, continues to live, shaping the present and guiding the future. This was the ultimate legacy, a gentle lullaby composed of enduring wisdom, ensuring that you went to bed with a mind at peace, connected to the endless, unfolding narrative of humanity. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace of understanding, allowing you to drift into slumber knowing that the comforting echoes of the past would forever resonate in the present. Having absorbed the enduring legacies of ancient African storytelling, your journey through the Pillow Talk past now gently nears its conclusion. You would feel the narrative current slow, the subtle rhythms of the words becoming softer, the images in your mind's eye gradually blurring, preparing you for the tranquil embrace of sleep. Imagine the embers of the communal fire, now a mere whisper of warmth and light, casting a gentle, fading glow on the gathered faces. This slow diminishment of light and sound is a deliberate act, a tender transition designed to guide your consciousness from active listening to the profound peace of slumber. This wasn't an abrupt end, but a gentle drifting, mirroring the natural ebb and flow of the day into night. You might compare it to a perfectly executed dimming of stage lights, signaling not an exit, but an invitation into a deeper, more personal experience. Historians still marvel at the intuitive understanding ancient cultures had of human physiology and psychology, seamlessly integrating narrative with the body's natural rhythms. You'd likely find this gentle winding down a stark contrast to the often jarring conclusions of modern entertainment, which can leave your mind racing. The elder storyteller's voice, which had guided you through vast landscapes of myth and history, would now soften, becoming a hushed murmur, almost a whispered secret meant only for your ears. You would notice the sentences growing longer, more flowing, each word carefully chosen to soothe and reassure, rather than to excite or inform. Imagine the voice itself becoming a warm blanket, enveloping you in a cocoon of peace, its gentle vibrations easing any lingering tension from your body and mind. This careful moderation of tempo and tone was a masterstroke of the Pillow Talk past, a final act of comfort to ensure a peaceful descent into dreams. It was a conscious effort to quiet the internal chatter, to calm the restless spirit, and to prepare the mind for the deep, restorative work of sleep. You might find this intentional vocal delivery a profoundly comforting experience, far more effective than your own conscious efforts to relax. There's a humorous thought: they probably didn't need guided meditation apps when they had this ancient, perfectly calibrated vocal soothing. One fascinating, though often overlooked, aspect is the specific use of certain tonal modulations, or vowel elongations at the end of narratives, subtly mimicking the sounds of wind or gentle waves, further enhancing the soporific effect. You'd probably be struck by the sophisticated acoustic elements employed to induce tranquility. As the story faded, the images it evoked would also grow indistinct, dissolving into a gentle mist within your mind. You would feel the vivid characters and intricate plots give way to a soft, diffuse glow, like memories gently settling into the subconscious. Imagine the transition from a brightly lit painting to a dreamlike blur, where the essence of the narrative remains, but its sharp edges soften, becoming part of your internal landscape. This deliberate blurring of images allowed the mind to transition from the active processing of information to the more receptive state required for dreaming, ensuring that the stories continued their work on a deeper, non-conscious level. You might find this gentle release from engagement incredibly liberating, allowing your mind to truly rest. This was not about forgetting. It was about integration, allowing the wisdom of the tales to sink beyond conscious thought. There's a peculiar truth. The stories were designed to linger not as explicit memories, but as a comforting presence, a subtle background hum of knowledge and security. The scholarly community often explores the cognitive benefits of narrative processing before sleep, noting its role in emotional regulation and memory consolidation during REM sleep. You'd likely appreciate the intuitive understanding these ancient practices had of brain function. A profound sense of reassurance would envelop you as the narrative drew to its close. You would feel a deep, abiding peace, a quiet confidence that the world, though vast and unpredictable, was ultimately ordered and meaningful, its complexities illuminated by the shared wisdom of your ancestors. Imagine a sense of profound well-being settling over you, all the worries of the day gently lifted, replaced by an expansive feeling of belonging and protection. This final reassurance was the ultimate gift of the Pillow Talk past, preparing not just your body for rest, but your spirit for renewal. You might find it a powerful antidote to your own anxieties about the future, offering a sense of calm resilience. The silence that followed the story would not be empty, but filled with the resonant echoes of the narrative, a comforting presence that lingered in the mind. This internal soundscape, created by the story, was your personal lullaby, ensuring that the tranquility persisted long into the night. One less commonly highlighted aspect is the intentional omission of jarring or unresolved plot points at the very end of stories meant for sleep, ensuring that the listener's mind was left in a state of harmonious resolution. You probably appreciate this meticulous attention to psychological comfort, ensuring a peaceful transition to slumber. The final moments of the Pillow Talk past were designed to be a gentle, almost imperceptible fading into sleep. You would feel your eyelids growing heavy, your muscles relaxing, and your breath deepening, mirroring the rhythm of the universe settling into its nightly repose. Imagine drifting, weightless and serene, carried on a current of ancestral wisdom and communal love, towards the shores of dreams. This was the pinnacle of comfort, a deliberate guidance into a restful, restorative slumber, ensuring that the wisdom shared would continue to nurture your spirit even in unconsciousness. You might find yourself wishing for such a profound and gentle end to every day, a seamless transition from the active world to the realm of restorative peace. The narratives provided a final, tender embrace, a silent promise that the comfort of your heritage would remain with you through the night. The pervasive sense of tranquility, a gentle current carrying you into dreams, was a testament to the powerful, soothing rituals that permeated these communal gatherings, ensuring that your sleep was not just rest, but a continuation of deep connection. End of script. Sweet dreams.